Welcome on into the Wise Guys. I'm John Tortorelli with my co-host Brennan Capozziello, and today we'll be discussing Super Bowl 57 and all things NBA, along with UFC 284. A little bit of controversy, just like
A
Juju
lot of
Smith-Schuster
controversy.
and AJ Brown this afternoon exchanging shots on Twitter. Never did I think that Juju began to a little TikTok battle with AJ Brown here. You see it?
I didn't think so either, but he's taking his little shot, Whatever you gotta do. I just want to say, episode 75. That's Big V, Vince Wilfork's number. Shout out, Patriots legend. A lot of controversy this weekend, John, from UFC 284 onto the Super Bowl, and I'm ready to dive in and get to
And
it.
75, even better player, Mean Joe Green, brother.
All right, all
I
right,
mean,
all
come
right.
on.
Yeah, I'll give
What are
you
we
that. All
talking
right,
about
I'll
here,
give you that.
man?
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Yes,
Greatest
sir.
defensive tackle of all time. I'll give you
You
that.
know the deal. Yeah, shout out to Mean Joe. So
Shout out.
we have quite a Super Bowl to discuss. The Kansas City Chiefs now win their second Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, a 38-35 victory. At the ending of this game, Brandon, there was a holding called on James Bradbury in a play of which set the Chiefs up to seal the game, ice the clock down at 8 seconds before the Eagles could even get a chance to go down to the other end and tie the game with a field goal. I want to begin this by asking you, did the referees make a mistake here? Did they potentially sell us of what could have been the best Super Bowl in recent memory?
Um, so here's why I'm gonna go with this, right? Did they make a mistake? 100% they made a mistake. And do you want to dive right into the penalty right away? You want to cover the portions of the game? You want to dive right into the penalty?
I kind of want to dive into the penalty because that's the biggest topic with the game. But
Um,
if you want to go through the entire game too, we can start off that way. Up to you, however you want to do it.
well, you know what? I mean, let's go in linear order. I do want to say, because before we get into the negatives, right? I do want to praise this a little. I mean, listen, what if, like John said, what a phenomenal game. Okay, first off, 38-35, incredible game. These two offenses really showed up. The defenses really weren't heard from besides Jalen Hurts making a mistake, not the Kansas City Chiefs really doing anything. They just capitalized on a play. Um, both offensive lines, John, played outstanding. Uh, the Chiefs just a tad higher simply because they allowed 0 sacks, and they were going up against the number 1 sack team in football, like I've been saying for the past couple of weeks. And I saw even a stat during the Super Bowl. I don't know if you saw it, popped up in a little corner saying the Eagles in the total season had 78 total sacks, behind only 2 of those great Chicago Bears teams back in the 80s, I believe. And the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, like I've been saying also the past couple of weeks, number 1 pass blocking O-line in the entire NFL for the regular season. They were able to shut it out.
Got a little bit of help too by the turf. That didn't hurt them either.
That turf, I mean, that was a big controversy topic too. I mean, I don't know if you saw the thing going around. Apparently, they spent over 2 years and over $800,000 on that. Was it grass or turf, John?
I believe it was turf.
That's what I'm saying. I believe it was turf too. Some people that I was watching with said it was grass. I thought it was turf. How does that happen, John? A multi-billion-dollar company spent 2 years over almost $1 billion on it. If that's true,
You saw it throughout the entire game. It's hard to plant your
entire
feet
game.
into that, man. And that really did hurt the product of this game because when you
Yes.
have athletes like Hassan Reddick, Chris Jones, some of those defensive players, it gets harder to plant your feet into the ground. And I feel like as an athlete, when you have to think about, okay, how am I going to make this cut or this slide, that really affects your entire psyche. So that did, in spite of this game being great, it really did make the product worse.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to hit on the stats of this game. I mean, if I were to told you, John, just if I were to told you this right before the game, and you didn't know anything else, the Eagles would have went 11 of 18 on 3rd down. They would have went 2 for 2 on 4th down. They would have won the time of possession 24 minutes and 13 seconds to 35 minutes and 47 seconds. If I were to told you that, what do you think you would have said to me?
Did they give up a 50-yard punt return touchdown and a fumble six? That's what
I don't think
happens.
that I don't think that's what you would have said to me, but I see what you did there. So I mean, they really did in terms of those stats, did everything they really needed to do to win this game. But they gave up those 2 sacks, weren't for a lot of yards, but when you're going up 0 sacks to 2 sacks, that's a loss of a play, loss of a down, basically.
Mhm.
They had 3 more penalties, and we'll get to the infamous penalty at the end of the game. Red zone, it was close, 3 for 5 to 4 for 5. But the two biggest to me, John, the Chiefs outran the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chiefs had 26 carries for 158 yards, 6.1 a pop. The Eagles had 32 for 115, but here's the thing, only 3.6 a pop.
And
That's a shocking stat to me.
they went away from it in the second half.
Went away.
And I felt like coming into this matchup, the big key for the Chiefs, we knew Travis Kelce against that defense was going to do his thing. It was Isaiah Pacheco. He's not far out from Philly where he grew up as a kid, and with the style he plays, kind of like Damian Williams back 3 years ago in the Super Bowl, you knew for that Chiefs offense, they were going to need to get production from somewhere else. We talked about maybe a big time play from MVS, but against that strong quarters look that the Eagles defense is going to throw at you, MVS is going to be taken out of the equation. So then you move to Isaiah Pacheco, 15 carries, 76 yards, a huge run in the first half. That sets the tone. And you paired that up with Jerick McKinnon. I mean, he made a heads up play at the end of the game. He could have had his first touchdown, probably the only chance for him to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That would be an incredible memory. But instead, he slid right before the goal line, let the clock chew out, and that right there is a heads up play. Great teammate, and that allowed the Chiefs to end the game right there.
Yeah, Pacheco was playing real good, and we lamented on it throughout the season that the Eagles' weakness on that defense was the running defense, just like the Cowboys. Their running defense was their weakness, and the Chiefs saw it and they took advantage. Like I said, that Jalen turnover, that one was a major key to this game as well, because you lose a play, you lose a drive, you give up 6 points, 7 points, they kick the extra point. It was just bad. It wasn't the Chiefs didn't do anything, like I said, to cause that play. Jalen tried to change hands, he fumbled the ball, and it was just an unfortunate event. But that turnover is the reason they won the time of possession. Because if you remember, that was in the second quarter, and they basically dominated that second quarter because they had the ball for a little bit, fumbled the ball. Chiefs defense scores, then they get the ball back and they go on a long drive. Mahomes barely touched the ball in the second quarter.
I mean, the Eagles sucked the life out of them. I felt like going to halftime. They really did with a 10-point lead.
With that because you go from the Chiefs high of scoring that touchdown the defense to that defense couldn't get off the field after that. The Eagles defense in the first half was pretty damn good, right? They forced 2 3 and outs, but in the second half they were terrible, John. They're terrible. The
That might
Chiefs,
be an understatement, BC.
I mean, terrible is pretty bad. So if it's even worse, that's I don't know what other word you would use for that, but the Chiefs have 4 possessions and they cashed in on all of them. They couldn't get off the field. They got no pressure on Mahomes. No sacks. There were a couple of QB hits, but no sacks, man. And from that vaunted defense that we talked about, how many players, how many fresh legs they can throw at you.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked on Orlando Brown's name, John. I think you need to give him a look. He had 0 sacks.
Orlando did step it up after the start to that Jaguars game. I mean,
Yep.
in the regular season, you talked about the Chiefs' offensive line. The tackle position was an issue for them at times, and I had to give them credit. They took their game up a level. They punched above their weight in the postseason, and with that interior look, you've got Thuney, Humphrey, and Trey Smith. I mean, that sets the tone. The offensive line is all about chemistry, and those guys have had so much time to work together. It's not a surprise with them staying healthy. I mean, they did one hell of a job keeping Mahomes upright, because that right there, if Mahomes was getting hit, I mean, we saw him in the first half. That ankle gets re-aggravated, man. I'm thinking to myself, I'm seeing the camera look, zooming at him in the sidelines, agonizing in pain, head falling, snooping to the right on his trainer. I'm like, oh boy. Mahomes is going to need whatever they got, but he's also going to need that offensive line to play their best game. And like you said, man, against all of the players the Eagles have in that front seven, they were the unsung hero of this game.
The air literally got sucked out of that stadium when Mahomes went down right there. the air in the room that I was watching it and got completely sucked out because everybody's just thinking, oh boy, because you're thinking the worst automatically. You shouldn't, but that's what our minds usually go to is the worst.
Playing through a high
Um,
ankle sprain.
but shout out Mahomes came out in the second half, fought through it. You want to know who? I don't know why, and I never watched this guy play. I was born in '97, and you know he played in the '80s and '90s. But I know about him, and I listen to a lot. Veterans of this game. John Elway, Mahomes reminds me of. This kid's a gamer. He's not scared. He's willing to put his body on the line, and I respect the hell out of that. Um, he just reminds me of that John Elway. He's got that grit to him. Where I mean, you know the play, the infamous play of John Elway, the helicopter, where he's like, "Screw it, I'm going for it. This is it."
Kenny
This man
Pickett,
was it,
bro.
and he was in his late 30s at that point too.
Mm-hmm. That's that's a play. Kenny Pickett too. His first college team did a helicopter
You
himself.
always got to bring it to the
Big Ben
Steelers,
as
huh?
well. I'm not joking. Big Ben had it. Kenny Pickett had it. That's what greats do. They put their body
Yep.
on the line.
Um. So yeah, that and then the Chiefs defense I got to speak on. They had two major stops in the second half. They forced a 3-and-out, and then the other one on a 17 play drive, they held the Eagles to 3 points. That's major,
Oh, big time. And in the first
big
half, we
time.
saw the penalties with that group. I mean, Derek Nottie, he had the offsides
Oh,
on fourth down. It
oh,
probably got sucking the life out of a group. When you get the fourth down and you make a critical self error like that, we knew with the Chiefs, in order for them to win the game, it was not only going to have to be Mahomes doing his thing, the offensive line stepping up, but for an Eagles offense that, outside of that one fumble six we discussed, played very good, lights out in the first half.
yeah,
The defense needed to avoid all of that. And all of those young players in the back end and the secondary, they were going to need to step up because the Eagles, man, they were throwing the football a good amount in the second half.
John, you saw going back to the encroachment or lining up off sides. You saw Spag's reaction to that right after, where he
Yeah.
just mouths, "What the?" It's just because you got 2 weeks to prepare. You've gone over this, and it's just like, come on, man. Those are the critical errors you can't make. Um, and I do want to say, you spoke on how great this offense played, minus that fumble six. Minus that fumble six. I mean, even with it though, there's a very good case that to be made that Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes.
I'll be honest with you, Brent. Mahomes 13 of 14 in the second half. He played a lights out game.
Insane second half, yes.
Monster. I mean, the one incompletion was a throwaway, if memory serves. And he also had that insane run as well, where
Yep.
to outrunning linebackers on one leg. In spite of that, Jalen Hurts did outplay him. I mean,
Yeah.
Hurts in this game, we saw it. He made 6 or 7 high-low throws. There was the one play, 3rd and 8, Madden style. He's zooming around the 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He's able to escape, goes on to his, I guess, his left side, and makes a great throw and a first down. He was sensational, Jalen Hurts. And,
One thing I do want to hit on because it just popped back into my head, the two plays, the two catches, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first one, Devontae Smith, I instantly, when I saw it, I said, that's not a catch. Because they showed this camera angle, and then they took about 3 minutes before they showed it again, which I absolutely hate about the NFL. They'll show terrible camera angles for about 3 minutes, and then they'll show the good one again, or for the first time. And I saw it first, and everybody else was like, Brand, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, dude, I saw it. I'm not imagining it. I saw the ball turn. I saw it turn. Wait till they show the replay. They finally showed it again, and you clearly saw the ball turn. The laces were there, and then they turned inside. So that one I instantly knew that was not a catch. The second one, I didn't have the best view on it. I didn't get a best breakdown of it because it was hard to match up the foot to the hand when it was off. So I don't know if you saw that one more clearly, if you have more to speak on that one, the Dallas Goddard.
to be honest with you, I'm blanking on that play, brother.
You don't remember? It was on the sideline where he kind of like bobbled it with one hand. He's going out
Right.
of bounds.
I don't think I got a good view of that either.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
not quite sure.
So I mean, those two. I just know in the room that I was watching in, a lot of people were upset about the second one. But now let's move on to the penalty, John. So you asked me earlier in the show. You said, "Did the refs make a mistake?" They 1000% made a mistake, John. So now I need to know two things before we continue, right, John? For all clarity. Firstly, I need to know, was the flag thrown on the initial contact or the secondary contact? I need to know that. This is for you and the viewers too. If anybody knows which one, I need to know. Because everybody knows what I'm talking about. The initial contact when Juju cuts in, cuts out, right? And it looks like there's a grab. Okay. And then the secondary contact I'm talking about is when Juju is going upfield and Bradbury has his hand on his back. I need to know which flag they threw it on. Which contact?
Secondary.
You think it's the secondary? Because I think a lot of people are saying the initial contact was the reason the flag was thrown.
Yeah, the flag was thrown later as well, too, which what makes me think it was secondary.
So you're jumping ahead, but I like where your head's at, right? So either way, I have a problem with whichever contact you want to talk about. Either way, I got a problem with it. So the initial contact, John, thank you for bringing that point up. If it's the initial contact, the flag was thrown incredibly late. Incredibly late. And if there's one thing that grinds my gears the most in sports, it's late flags or late fouls in basketball. I hate it. In basketball, I absolutely hate when a guy takes a shot and the refs blow the whistle after the ball is clearly out and not going in. I despise, because you know what's going through their mind. If that ball goes in, they're not blowing the whistle. I hate that. Same in football. All right. So if it's the initial contact, the flag was thrown late. If it's the secondary contact, that's not a flag. That's ticky-tacky at best. He put his hand on his back and was not grabbing him at all in the secondary contact. Okay? Anybody with eyes can see that. Right? And that right there, if it is the secondary contact, John, should not decide the outcome of a game.
A Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl.
One of the best we've seen.
Because make no mistake about it, that flag decided the game. Because if they don't call that flag, it's an incomplete pass. It's fourth down. The Chiefs kick a field goal. Let's say Bucker makes it, right? They're up 38-35, but guess what? The Eagles still have one timeout and a little over a minute and 30 left. Mm-hmm. Instead, they get the ball with 6 seconds left and 0 timeouts.
And let's say Bucker misses a second field goal. He missed one, a 42-yarder in the first half. Yep. Now the Eagles are getting the ball pretty close to Chiefs territory, and they just got to get 2 first downs. What do you think happens? If they get 2 or 3 first downs, if Bucker missed that field goal, the Eagles win the Super Bowl, and we don't even see overtime. I was at least hoping to see overtime. And as an NFL fan, you would think the league, look, we saw versus the Bengals, the Chiefs did get a favorable whistle. In this game, the issue that I had was, and you kind of made the point before, so there's a play in the first half, early in the second quarter, where James Bradbury holds on the Juju. He gets away with a great foul. I mean, credit to him. If there's any foul you're going to get away with, it's third down. He's holding on the Juju. I don't know if Juju had like those hand warmer packs on his, torso, but if he did, I mean, James Bradbury may as well just ripped it off Juju's body, and they don't call it. So in the second half, I felt like the referees were looking to really even it out, and that's the bigger problem I have with refereeing. Look, you're going to make mistakes as a ref, and there's going to be holding almost every single penalty. But in the stakes of this game, with 2 opponents that are trying to get overtime, to really drive the NFL products, you would think the referees would let that one go, because it was too small of a contact and too high leverage of a moment, and especially considering for the referees, in their minds, I would believe, they're thinking, all right, look, we missed that call in the first half. We owe the Chiefs one. When in reality, you didn't owe the Chiefs one, because there's many calls you're going to miss throughout the game. That's just human error. And for referees, you're going to make calls with instincts, not thought process.
Well, John, I mean, there's a holding on every play. There's holding on every play. You can ask any NFL player, former or present, there's holding on every single play. And back to that overtime point, isn't it just a little crazy that the first season where the overtime rule is now in effect, we don't get one overtime game in the playoffs? It's just a little crazy to think about, but 100% agree. And back to that point that you made, how the refs didn't call in the first half, right? There's also a thing where you got to call the game the way you've been calling it the entire game. And it was clear from the start that the refs were going to let these guys play through. They were going to let them play football, which I personally believe, I think you agree, and I think any football fan agrees, is the best product for the game. When the refs are not involved and they do not decide the game, where you let these players go play football. All right? I'm not saying blatant, obvious tugging and all that's face mask, whatever, but you know what I mean. Ticky-tacky stuff. Nobody likes that for the game. But back to the initial contact, right? Because I do truly believe that's what majority of people are talking about when they say that it's a flag, right? And I already lamented that it was incredibly late if it's the initial contact, and it shouldn't have been thrown. If you're gonna throw the flag, throw the flag. If you're not, swallow it, swallow it. But back to the initial. Is it holding? By the letter of the law, sure. Okay. I saw the one clip when the ball was basically hiked, the one angle where you can kind of see the angle of what's happening, because all the other angles are Juju. Bradbury is behind. You can't see his other hand. So there's the one angle where you kind of see it, but from the other side of the field. To me, it still looks ticky tacky, and I know Bradbury came out and he said that he held him, he tugged him. All right, and I respect him for taking that. I respect him. And he did say that I thought the refs were going to let me get away with it. Mm-hmm. To me, it still doesn't. He can admit it, and that's fine. To me, to my eyes, maybe if I would have gotten a better, clear view, because it is from far away, I would have said, okay, that is clear. I am saying, sure, it's letter of the law, it's a flag. Mm-hmm. But this goes back to a discussion me and you actually had, I think, a week ago, John, where the report came out where the NFL was discussing having an active conversation about hip drop tackles, and we talked about how it's getting ridiculous. You know, defenses are just too much is being put onto them, and this goes back to a point that I made. You got to give throw the defenders a freaking bone here.
Love that, pendulum.
That contact was basically right at the line of scrimmage. I know you can pull up the freaking actual letter of the law. I know people can screenshot and show it to me. I've seen it. I read it. I get it. Okay. But come on. Really? He's allowed 5 yards of contact. I'm all right. If it's just a tiny little tug or grab, I think defenders should be allowed to do that with inside of 5 yards. If it's blatantly and he's tackling him, or he's got a full grasp and you see in a complete movement, like blatant, all right, I'm down with that. But that one was just, it wasn't super clear. And this goes to my final point about it. A quote from the great Tom Brady, John. 3 things that he outlined for how you should look at a penalty or taunting: clear, obvious, prolonged. Was it clear? Was it obvious? And was it prolonged? It obviously was not prolonged.
It was a prolonged delay, though. The delay was prolonged.
The flag? The flag, yes, was delayed. The actual penalty, though, was not prolonged. Was it obvious? To me, when I was sitting in the room, and you can even turn on the sound and watch the play for yourself and listen to the announcers, it wasn't obvious to people, because the initial I've listened to it back too, trust me, because I slowed the film down, John. I tried to see, because after the play, the announcer says, I forget which one it was. It wasn't Greg Olsen, it was the other one. He said,
Kevin Burkhardt.
Yes. He said, oh, and there's a incomplete to Juju Smith-Schuster. Pause. Oh, there's a flag at the 10-yard line, right? So I clicked in my mind. So I slowed the film down, and I watched at the 10-yard line. I kept my eye as a dagger on there. I didn't see a flag. Until the screen was basically off, I didn't see a flag. So if it was thrown, the camera angle was not showing it anymore. So you can't tell me it was not a late flag. And I heard Michael Wilbon and Ryan Clark say on First Take that it was an early flag. They threw it right away. You're lying on national television unless I got a terrible angle. If you can show me the angle that he threw it early and he threw it on time, I'll shut up and I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the ref by the goal line, he had the whistle in his mouth. He wasn't even. I mean, he's an athlete in the NFL. Juju was not getting that ball. He's not a 4-3 guy. And that was incomplete, too. If you're not actually going to be in the play, like Juju's not catching that ball, even if the slight holding, was mitigated.
He doesn't. It's uncatchable.
Yeah, and one real quick side note, I think Greg Olsen's great. As somebody from New Jersey, 18 years ago, Kevin Burkhardt, he was working at a car dealership and on the side broadcasting high school games. And less than 2 decades later, he's doing the Super Bowl on Fox. Talk about something pretty cool. I mean, he was at a car dealership like 20 miles from where I live, and I think that's really cool. He actually is from New Jersey, the same area as Greg Olson. Now they're a duo on Fox. I thought they were great this season,
Shout
stepping
out.
in for
Yeah.
Tom Brady when look they're backups, and I thought a lot of people were disappointed. It seemed like that they didn't get Michaels and Collinsworth or Tony Romo. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Greg Olson's better than Tony Romo. I think he's done a phenomenal job this year. I love
I'm a
Romo.
Romo guy. I'm a
I
Romo
love the
guy. I get
basketball
it.
analogies, but here's the thing with Tony Romo. Let's talk about it. So, real quick side note, we're going on a tangent here before we come back to the game. Tony Romo is enjoyable to listen to. I like him because number one, I mean, the sounds he makes are hysterical. The sound effects. The does he get the extension, Jim? No, that's hysterical. And the basketball analogies. There was actually a report that came out that they were disappointed in the network with him constantly making these analogies to Magic Johnson and the Showtime Lakers, not actually preparing for these games. Tony Romo is great. I think he's an enjoyable listen, but when I want to learn about the game and kind of enjoy the experience and get a good few tidbits, Greg Olson is incredibly selfless. It's just him constantly asking questions in my Pereira, and I think his storytelling is better than Romo, quite frankly, and the perspective he has, he's a more enjoyable listen, man. I love Greg Olson.
Yeah, it's to each his own. To each his own. I'm a Romo guy. I really like Romo. Maybe it's because I'm a quarterback guy too.
Sure.
I just love
Yeah.
the quarterbacks, right? But yeah. But I mean, so to wrap up that penalty, I mean, for me, I would just love somebody to argue my points there
Mhm.
because initial contact. If it's the initial one, it's super late and eh, incatchable ball. If it's the secondary contact, that's ticky tacky. That should not decide the outcome of a game. The way they've been calling the game the entire way, you got to can keep it consistent. It's just all the way bad. I mean, listen? Do the Chiefs still win the Super Bowl without that call? Maybe. They have a very good shot because they're most likely taking the lead regardless with the field goal. Okay. So obviously you're going to have a great shot if you're taking the lead with a minute and a half left. But we're also, and you speak about storyline, Sean. What a storyline. Mahomes, they kicked the field goal, right? Now, Jalen Hurts, second round pick, takes over. Third round pick?
Second round pick,
Second round pick. Okay, I
runner
was
up
right.
for MVP.
But I know I was going to build to that. I'm building him. Second round pick. First off, benched in Alabama, had to go to Oklahoma.
In
Comes in
national championship game.
national championship game. Come on, man. Second round pick, back up to Carson Wentz. Carson gets thrown out the door. He comes in. Rough go early on, right? Rough go.
Lucas Thumps.
And then this year takes the jump. John was pounding the desk. MVP, MVP. Justin, MVP, MVP. 14-3 record. All right. This guy comes in, balls out, most rushing touchdowns in the season, I believe. You look at Mahomes and Jalen Hurts' numbers, they're almost identical in terms of like points scored and stuff like that. This kid, right? Okay. Minute and 30 left. One timeout. He's about to, because it's not, I told you this, John, and I told Justin this too on our last show for the Super Bowl. It's not just about Jalen either. And he might not like it, but he's carrying the back of some other people too. It's the legacy of the running quarterbacks, proving the system works. I'm a non-believer, right? Proving the system works. You validate yourself, you validate Lamar, Justin Fields, etc.,
Josh
etc.,
Allen.
etc. Iffy, but okay. This kid's put in the brightest moments. Let him go out. Like, come on. Isn't that a great storyline? Because now he's at least going down on his shield, right? Going down on his shield. This one, I mean, we could talk about the final play. It was a crap final play that the Eagles dialed up. I mean, you're at what were they at? The 36-yard line, and they try to throw a Hail Mary. I mean, you had 6 seconds. I know it's impossible, but you got to still believe in it until the clock hits triple zeros. If I'm Sirianni, I'm running a quick out to a guy, and I'm saying get as many yards as you can with at least 1 or 2 seconds left on the clock. If it's 5, 10, whatever, just get as many yards and then throw the Hail Mary. And you can tell on that last throw, the shoulder really did bother Jalen on that throw. He couldn't get anything under it. It
And
was a dud. Yeah.
even with that, I mean, okay, so I guess on that note, this is so inconsequential. I guess you throw AJ Brown in the slot, use him down the seam as a decoy, and then you have Devontae Smith get depth and 15 yards down the field, you get to midfield.
Yeah,
Then you're asking their kicker, to kick a 65, 70 yarder, or you can, get the better field position out
throw
of
the
him.
Hail Mary.
Again, that's inconsequential.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jalen Hurts for a second. Jalen
Oh,
Hurts went to the Super Bowl after two playoff games where he really did nothing for Philadelphia, right? Becomes the first quarterback to have three rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl, 70 rushing yards, 304 passing. He had over 100 more passing yards than Patrick Mahomes, who was the best quarterback I think I've seen. If he's not one, he's two. It's like Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Jalen Hurts played to me an A game. He had the mistakes, so it wasn't an A plus, but given he was coming off a shoulder injury, he looked every bit the value of a franchise quarterback. To you, does this to some way really pay light to a running quarterback? Did this change your perspective on Hurts? Can he be different than the rest almost?
here's the thing. I don't want to be the negative Nancy, but I have to be the negative Nancy. 'Cause
Here we
it's just
go.
I have to speak my truth, and it's what I believe. It's what I believe. If you surround a Lamar Jackson with the talent that Jalen Hurts had, I'm sure he can get the job done too. I'm sure if you surrounded a Michael Vick with that talent, he could have got the job done too. RG3, Cam Newton, name the guys.
But didn't they give Lamar Jackson that in 2019 his
No,
MVP season?
not even close, John. Not even close to the talent that this kid has offensively. He has arguably the best offensive line in football.
The
Two
best.
future Hall of Famers on there. Two, people believe, two number ones. Okay. A pretty good deep receiving core after that. Dallas Goedert, who's very underrated, definitely
He's
top
got
10 tight
three
end.
awesome weapons.
And then he's got the running backs that are switchblade. I know they didn't use
But
them well
in
this
Lamar's
game,
MVP
but they're still
season,
switchblade.
in Lamar's MVP season, he had a top five defense, an elite offensive line, and a Pro Bowl tight end Mark
Yeah, but he didn't
Andrews.
have the receiving weapons, John. He had
But
Mark Andrews, which can match up with Goddard, but he didn't have an AJ Brown. He did not have a Devontae Smith. All right. And you say top five defense. The Eagles also had a top five defense, arguably the best defense in the league.
that's what I'm saying. The only difference here is the wide receivers. That's all we're talking about. Because
Well, that's
if you
pretty
want to go
big
tit,
difference, man.
if you want to go tit for tat here, the Ravens may have had slightly better running backs, but here's the thing: the Ravens' offense was not built with Greg Roman. They actually replaced him today with the new pass-heavy coordinator.
Yes.
They were not going to pass the football at that offense.
No, we
because
get
Lamar
that,
could
John. We
not.
get that. I'm just going talent wise. They didn't have two number one wide receivers, and that's major, John. If you have two number ones, that's insanely major of how you were able to scheme a game. So I'm sorry if you can tell me they're able to get these guys for Lamar and them. Okay, I'm a believer, but I don't believe so. I mean, we're going to speak on the Eagles' future outlook. There's a lot of free agents coming up. Listen, Jalen's going to. The conversations are starting to be out about a contract extension. You don't think
So
he's
go
going
on.
to be
You
demanding?
didn't finish your Jalen Hurts point. We got to Lamar Jackson. I interrupted you. What was
No,
the end?
my point was that if you surround a running quarterback with a type of talent, this elite talent that Jalen had, okay, yes, I believe that they can. But I don't believe that a lot of teams can do that because it's insane. You even speak on it. They're able to get him on a rookie contract. He's eventually,
1.5 mil.
yes, and like I'm saying right now, he's going to have that contract extension coming up. You're going to have to pay Devontae Smith soon. Maybe Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, all these guys. You look at the free agent list of how many free agents they've got this year. That's a lot of money. Guess what? You just dropped two coordinators. These things happen. So for the year, insane. One of the best teams, right? Probably the best overall team in football this year from top to bottom. But are they going to be that next year? And we do have to be fair and objective. They had a cakewalk of a schedule.
Oh,
They did.
yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
next year, John, are they going to have a cakewalk of a schedule?
Probably.
No, they're not because they're going to
Probably.
because of their record this year. They're going to have a very very tough schedule.
But you look at the NFC.
They're going to
The Eagles might have the best quarterback in the conference. They have by far the best team. Even if, let's say, Jason Kelsey retires, and so is Fletcher Cox. Well, you drafted Cam Jurgens, and you have Jordan Davis. So you lose those two Hall of Famers. You have Shane Steichen be hired by the Colts. Your offensive coordinator is at the door. Well, you have Nick Sirianni. That's the perk in having an offensive coach. You lose the defensive coordinator and Jonathan Gannon, who I think every Eagle fan is calling out. Look, Gannon did not lose y'all the game. I think they really fell for some of that Chiefs eye candy, and Andy Reid took him out back with that creative play calling. Whether it's him or Eric Bieniemy who dialed the shot, I mean, those two plays in the red zone, we have to talk about Andy Reid. that he drew up, man, that is why Andy Reid is probably the best play designer in football. If he's not the best, he is, he is the best. Let's leave it at that. So the Eagles can lose all of these things next season, right? Javon Hargrave is a free agent. I think they bring him back. James Bradbury's on a 1 year deal. We'll see what
All right,
happens
John,
there.
I do want to interrupt you because here's the just this is just the early schedule of what the NFC East has to play next year and why I say they're not going to have an easy schedule. So first off, they have to play the entire AFC East. That's tough. Next up, they got to play one opponent from the NFC South. We know about them; they're trash. The NFC North, they've got standing right now three pretty good teams.
Well, they play the
Packers,
Vikings, right? Because usually make the schedules. The best team will play the best team from the other division.
yeah,
So it'll be Minnesota.
maybe. I mean, maybe they get the Lions. That'll be a much better matchup.
Yeah, Lions are
And
better than the Vikings.
and
But
they play one opponent from the AFC West. And we know how the AFC West is pretty good. I mean, if they get the Raiders,
Chiefs,
okay, all luck to them. But if they get any of those other three teams, that's tough.
I'm pretty confident it would be the Chiefs.
If it's the Chiefs, I mean, that's tough, man. So you're gonna have a much tough. They're gonna have a tough ass schedule next year. They're not gonna. It's not gonna be like last year or this past year, I should say.
The schedule will be tougher, but it's also always an exact science where you're always going to have two or three teams that shoot up, two or three teams that drop down. That, you may have a team that goes worse the first. We saw it with the Giants, we saw it with the Jaguars, and a couple of other teams almost snuck into the playoffs. We know with Philadelphia that they have a big decision to make this offseason, Brandon. That is Jalen Hurts. He is currently making $1.5 million as a former second round pick. And in the Super Bowl, I said this, there was a conversation to be had. He outplayed Mahomes. Whether or not you agree, it's, at the eye of the beholder. I think he played better than Mahomes because he had over 100 more passing yards. And granted, this is an injured Mahomes, but even still, that's a top three quarterback in the league. Mahomes on one leg. And Hurts had an MVP
Jalen
season.
was hurt too.
He was hurt too. That's a great point with his shoulder. I mean, I don't think enough people really noticed that because you saw him throwing a 53-yard dot to A.J. Brown in the red zone or into the end zone. Like, he was healthy the entire season.
One to
He
Devontae
also,
Smith on the left side of the field too.
I mean, he made 6 or 7, probably at least 5 terrific throws, whether it was on the run, on the money, his arm strength. He's gotten so much. I mean, the jump that he's taken can only be compared to Josh Allen, I think, in terms of accuracy, arm strength, consistency. And we had questions. Hurts can throw, right? He's not Michael Vick. He's not Lamar Jackson in his rookie season. We know he can, but it was a matter of doing it in the biggest moments against the best teams, the best defensive coordinators. And let me tell you, against Spags, against a Chiefs defense that by and large is above average, he had a terrific game. Do the Eagles extend Jalen Hurts for $44 million this offseason, which is right around his annual market value, or do they have some reservation after seeing Carson Wentz? And I don't know if it's like a Ben Simmons fall off that he had.
Yeah. How many years left on his contract does he have, John?
He's got one more, but they'll give him the 5th year Oh, whoa. He's a second round pick, so he doesn't get the 5th year option.
Nope. So he's on. So this is his fourth season. So he's playing on his last deal.
Yeah, so now he's contract eligible.
Yeah, I would imagine that he's probably going to get the contract extension. See, that's
Probably.
what I'm saying. That's major right there. Are you gonna? And I don't know how many of these free agents you hit on, but Fletcher Cox, Robert Quinn, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Jason Kelsey might retire. We don't know yet. James Bradbury, Isaac
Simalo.
Simalo, thank you. TJ Edwards, Ndamukong Suh, Linville Joseph, Miles Sanders, and Chauncey Gardner Johnson. A lot of
Kaiser
guys.
White.
Oh, I named a couple there that are veterans that they kind of brought in late season, but still, you know, it's just a lot of guys there. And I don't know if they're gonna have the money to pay all of them. They're definitely not gonna have enough money to pay all of them. All right. Especially with that contract coming with Jalen Hurts. That's big time. And Devontae Smith, like I said, he's gonna be wanting his money soon too. One thing they do have in their favor, John, is they got 2 first-round picks.
10th
They've got
overall.
the 10th overall pick from New Orleans, and they've got the 30th. I believe that they're probably going to draft a defensive player. I think that's just the smartest choice to make. So they got some interesting decisions to make. I do believe they don't resign. They extend Hurts. And then another thing, like you mentioned, both coordinators gone. How they gonna? We're gonna find out the real depth of this coaching staff.
That's a great point. The good news is, so like I said before, Hurts, he can get upwards to a $50 million deal. I wonder if he has so much of the intangible where he takes a pay cut, which would be insane given he hasn't gotten the payday yet. And he's also not established as, a top five quarterback that even if he has these injuries, he's going to get a bag in his third contract. But there's another thing with Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team. Even if you give him a $200 million extension for 5 years or 4 years, he's going to be on a rookie contract next season. And so you have the flexibility to extend a lot of these veterans, retaining Javon Hargrave. You add a corner at pick 10 because there's a lot of pretty good ones in this class. And now you're looking at Jalen Hurts for a second year playing at an MVP level. A top 10 quarterback is what I think he's now become, and is making chump change. Do you think the Eagles next year will find themselves back in the Super Bowl, given how out of whack the NFC is?
No. I just think it's super hard to get back. And while you might be right in terms of he'll be on the rookie contract this year, I just don't see them being able to resign a large majority of these free agents, especially there's a lot of key ones. I mean, we don't see what the Bucks did after they won the Super Bowl, re-signing basically every starting player that they had the year prior. We don't see that very often. And when we did see it with the Bucks, we saw they didn't get back to the Super Bowl. So I just can't, because it's just like we all know there's about what 4 new playoff teams every year. All right.
Yep.
There's always that one team that's coming up. I know you're major high on the Lions. I love the Lions too. The Vikings are still a pretty good team.
They'll fall off.
The Packers. We'll see what Aaron Rodgers does.
They'll fall off.
I know you're high on Jordan Love, so there you go. The NFC West, I believe the Rams will be back. I do believe that. I know some people are skeptical about Stafford's health, but I do believe they'll be back.
The Panthers have this monster coaching staff. They're retaining Steve Wilkes. They're bringing in Ejiro Evero from Denver. They have Frank Reich. They have Josh McCown.
Jim Caldwell too. Yeah,
I thought maybe it wasn't Steve Wilkes. I think it might have been Jim Caldwell.
I think it was Jim Caldwell. Yeah.
Yep, right.
Steve Wilkes went to the 49ers. He's the defensive coordinator for the 49ers now.
Thank you.
So there, and then we talk about the 49ers are still going to be there. We'll see, Brock Purdy, he'll probably miss a little bit, so maybe it'll be Trey Lance. You got the Seahawks. They were a good team this year. So there's just a bunch of teams in the NFC East. The Cowboys, they're still going to be there, even though people like to say they're frauds, and they haven't really shown otherwise that they aren't. But they're still a pretty good team, and I think that they're a playoff team currently constructed. We haven't seen moves to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it. I don't see it, to answer your question. I don't see the Eagles getting back. I think it's incredibly hard, and I know. Here's the thing that we got to keep in mind too, and it's something that I brought up about Joe Burrow. So a quarterback who loses their first Super Bowl appearance never gets back. Jalen Hurts just did. Joe Burrow wasn't able to get back. Jalen is, is on his loss. So that whatever you want to call it, record, tradition, whatever, is still standing. So, I mean, somebody's got to break it, right? Because records are meant to be broken, but until it's broken,
So that list of players? I've got it.
I don't know that list of players. I would imagine Dan Marino's on that list, I think.
Oh, yeah, he is definitely on it. He is actually.
Joe is obviously on that list. Burrow.
So here's the list of players. Some of these guys I actually can't even notice. Jimmy Garoppolo, Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Colin Kaepernick, Rex Grossman, Hasselbeck, Donovan McNabb, Delhomme in Carolina, Gannon in Oakland, Collins, Doug Collins. Am I thinking of the NBA coach in the Bulls? I am. Terry Collins. There you go. Steve McNair, the late great. Drew Bledsoe. I'm not even going to mention the Steelers' name. We'll move on from him. And then Chandler. I don't know who that is, but he was another player on that list. And for some reason, Dan Marino's not on there, even though he is the quarterback, the most important one that never got back. Neither here nor there.
So, I mean, so Jalen's got an uphill battle, just like Joe Burrow does. And, we'll see. For me, though, it's just, it's hard. It's really hard to get back, man. It's hard. Like, I can't put it any other way. It's just insanely difficult.
It's hard unless Jalen Hurts takes a pay cut. And look,
He's
so I'm gonna
not,
ask.
John. I know you brought that up. I want to just speak on. I know you brought that up, but we've got to remember there's only one person in sports history that has actually consistently taken an actual pay cut. And I'm not just
Yo,
doing that to put more on Brady. No, there's not two. Who's the second? Who's the
that
second?
man, Patrick Mahomes.
No, he is not. No,
Why do
no,
you think he took a
no, 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 no,
10-year
no, no,
deal,
no. I'm
man?
gonna
That was
explain to you. I'm
pricing
gonna
him to
explain to you
take
why you're
cap
wrong on that.
rise.
I'm gonna explain to you why you're wrong on that. I know what you mean by that. You're thinking about something different. You're thinking about putting the cap hit down the line. Okay? Every quarterback does that. Even Aaron Rodgers does that. Okay? What Tom Brady does is consistently take under market value. Okay? No quarterback, no player in any sport has ever done that, especially at the level of a Tom Brady. Okay? So I know you want to think Mahomes does that. He doesn't. He's going to get his money.
Well, he
Okay?
kind of does.
He doesn't, John.
You
He
want to know
doesn't.
why? Because he signed a 10-year. Patrick Mahomes signed
If
a
you don't think
10-year.
that Mahomes is going to
All right.
renegotiate that contract in a couple of years or so, you're out of your freaking mind. If you think he's going to be playing for that much money, okay, think that. Think
Let me
that.
continue. So Patrick Mahomes in 2020 signed a 10-year, $450 million contract. At the time, $45 million was the top of the market for quarterbacks. But
Yes.
we don't see 10-year contracts in football. So
No.
Mahomes signed that to get the guarantee because he wanted to play in Kansas City for his entire career. But also because in the last 6 years of that contract, as TV deals shot up and the cap continued to rise, he was going to be below market value for the entire second half of that contract. So you get the guarantee you'll be a Chief, most likely, but you also know you're not going to get the most bang, the most amount of money possible because you're committing on a single deal that in 5 years will then be below market value for the entire second half of a lifetime of that contract you just signed.
How much do you have the numbers in front of you about how much he's going to be making late into that contract?
I do on spot rack.
I would imagine it's probably what upwards of high 30s.
Yes, the cap hit this year 46. Next year 46. This year was 35. So Patrick Mahomes cap hit 5, 7, those are the rookie deals. 35, 46, 44, 46, 41, 59, 44, 44, 50 in 2030, his age 35 season. He's going to be on contract his entire career. And then 52 in his age 36 season.
Yeah. See, even those numbers you said to me, you realize that Tom Brady was taking like he was making like 25 million or less.
Yeah, 20,
That,
25.
yeah, that's what I mean. And you named
A
50s there.
decade ago, though, too. Keep that in mind. That was in the
He
2010s.
this year he made he this year look at his contract, he made crap. Okay. I think he made maybe 15 million or 20 million. Okay. Um, he has consistently taken well under market value. And you named a couple of 50 millions in there. Tom Brady's, I don't think he's ever sniffed 50 million in terms of a single season contract. So I know you want to think that Jalen's not going to take a pay cut. If he might push it down the line, which every quarterback does. But I think Jalen, for the best interest for himself, he's got to take the money he can get because also he's got to think about he's got to be honest and objective with himself. My shelf life as a running quarterback is not very long.
Yeah,
I have to get my money now.
sure.
This is what Lamar is doing. Lamar is like, I'm not taking a penny less. I need my money now.
Oh, I agree with you. So we know Philadelphia's going to give him the contract. You don't think the Eagles are going to get back here next year? I think it's pretty likely or pretty possible because of the state of the NFC. But I do want to discuss now.
How
Chase,
likely? We'll put a percentage on it, John. How likely do you
I
think?
think there's a 50. No, that's actually really high.
That's
I
really
think
high.
there's a 40% chance next season the Eagles are back in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Because even if the worst case doomsday scenario happens, Kelsey retires and Cox retires, you're replacing them with two rookies in Jurgens and Jordan Davis, who I think is going to be a stud. I think he'll be fine. I think they extend Hargrave. They may lose some of the linebackers like Kaiser White. TJ Edwards has been really good for them. And ultimately, because of how good their pass rush is, I think while James Bradbury may leave, they'll replace him in the draft with some other rangy 6'2" corner. There's a lot of them. So, I mean,
Mhm.
Philadelphia is going to win 13 games next year, I believe. The offense line is going to be elite. Hurts is going to be, if not the first, the second best quarterback in the conference. We'll see a Stafford, and the weapons are still going to be there.
Mhm. Okay.
So the point, Shane Steichen is going to Indianapolis, long time offensive assistant in Los Angeles that worked with Justin Herbert his rookie season, then Jalen Hurts the last 2 years. Now Philadelphia, it took them a little bit last year to realize, hey, Hurts is pretty good at running the football, so maybe we should do that. And then we saw them win 9 games, get into the playoffs. This year, Jalen Hurts takes a monster step, and Steichen is at the head of that as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. What do you think of this hire for Jim Irsay, an organization in Indianapolis that was looked at as prestigious, but now they're trying to climb out of the dumpster, but they've got to take a couple of showers to get back to the right smell.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not very familiar with Steichen. Just because I'm more familiar with the major name coordinators. So I really don't know what my outlook is. I can obviously speak on they've got an offensive guy, so they obviously want to go in the offensive direction, right? Um, so yeah, and I brought up to you before the show, I could easily see them drafting an Anthony Richardson. If you look at the style offense that he called in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, and you get an Anthony Richardson, you could run that style. I mean, you got guess what that the Colts have that the Eagles don't have, and I know he had a down season. They got Jonathan Taylor. And we believe that if fully healthy and playing at his apex, he's arguably the best running back in the league. So that's all I can really speak on. So I guess, good hire. Maybe you can speak on it more if it was a really good hire, thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, whatever. But yeah, that's all I can really say on it.
Thumbs in the middle here. So Steichen worked in Los Angeles with Nick Sirianni when he was with the Chargers, offensive assistant. I think Steichen did a pretty good job, but the Colts, they might be in one of the worst situations in football, right? Chris Ballard's in the hot seat, it feels like. The offensive line has regressed due to injuries. The good news is that you get the fourth overall pick, you get Jonathan Taylor, like you said, and you get a pretty good defense now, Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. The issue in Indianapolis was Jim Irsay. And when you have an owner that's starting to break the boundary and push the limits, that's when you get some big red flags. Because Irsay, for a long time, stayed out of things. But last year, the emotion in that guy was unbelievable. I mean, you saw the last game of Frank Reich when the Patriots, Uche, Barmore, all those defensive linemen got to Sam Ellinger what would have been 12 times. Irsay requests Matt Ryan to be benched, though the head coach was 500 at Matt Ryan, so you weren't really in that bad of a spot. And then after a game of which the offensive line crumbles, you fire the quarterback guru. I just don't know with a first-time head coach Shane Steichen if he'll be better than Frank Reich. And I look at this Colts organization. A year ago, I thought they were going to win the AFC North like a lot of people. And now I look at the Colts, and there's a massive red flag and an owner that's not going to be getting rid of. And I just don't know if things go poorly here, what's then going to happen? Is Steichen going to have a short leash? He's not proven. He hasn't, outside of Philadelphia, he hasn't really shown to be a leader of high level offenses. And that Eagles team was loaded with talent that he's not necessarily going to have in the offensive line and at wide receiver. So there's a lot of pressure here on Chris Ballard to finally hit on a wide receiver. MPJ is good, Michael Pittman. But we do know that the Colts need a better wide receiver one. And it's going to be a strange year up and coming for the Colts. It's transitional season. I think they're taking a quarterback at number 4. And honestly, I don't even know if they're going to have the fourth pick. I feel like, given the expectations by Jim Irsay, they're probably unrealistic, but he wants to make the playoffs. And also the pressure of having that owner on your shoulder, they can move up to the first overall pick here with the Bears, try to get past the Texans. Because you look at the AFC South, man, the Titans, they don't have their quarterback. The Jaguars do. The Jaguars also have their head coach. So now the last two teams, and the Texans and the Colts, they have two solid. I like DeMeco Ryans a lot. They have solid promise long term, solid potential, but they don't have a quarterback. And so I think for the Bears, they may leverage those two teams against each other, see who's got more assets. They get the first pick. They get your shot at whatever quarterback you want. And if I think one team is more desperate than the other, I think the Colts, out of desperation, could sacrifice a ton for Bryce Young. And now they're putting that rookie out there on offense in an environment where it's going to be an uphill battle to develop and actually live up to the expectation and lead the Colts back to the promised land.
Yeah, no, I agree. You hit it on the head.
The other hire, Jonathan Cannon, he's going to Arizona where They're a pick above the Colts. They've got the third overall selection. They do have Kyler Murray, who will probably miss a good portion, if not all, of next season. We know it takes a while for the quarterbacks to recover. Cliff Kingsbury's gone. I think he's probably still in Taiwan. Good for him. Steve Keim is gone as well. Much like the Colts, the Cardinals are in a transitional season where you're finally rebuilding. You're taking a step back to hopefully shoot up into the top tier of the NFC, right? You look at the quarterbacks in the conference. I mean, I think Nick Wright made this point. There's no good quarterbacks, no quality quarterbacks where you think legitimately they can win you a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts, he's shown he can play at that level, but there's not an Aaron Rodgers if he gets traded to the Jets, the Raiders, wherever it may be, and there's not a Tom Brady. Russell Wilson's been gone now for over a year. Matt Ryan was traded. The AFC has about 7 quarterbacks you look at and say, okay, this guy's a superstar. He can do it for you. And the NFC, Kyler could be the best quarterback in a year when he comes back off the torn ACL. So I don't feel like the Cardinals' job is really that bad. Great climate. I mean, generally speaking, it's not a bad place to live, but you also get the quarterback as well. It's a little bit weird though to me that the Cardinals will go off a defensive coordinator here. I think this might be because they're looking at Gannon and they want to go a little more hands off with Kyler. Maybe, get an offensive coordinator that he wants and will placate directly to his strengths. So this was a surprising hire now. I didn't think Gannon would go to Arizona. Now for the Cardinals, you're going to this transitional phase, man. They're an organization that's not going to put a lot of money into the head coach. I think back to the days that had Bruce Arians, man, with Carson Palmer. I'm like, damn, those Cardinals teams had structure. Now with these teams, I'm just like, you have a talented quarterback and nothing else on the bone outside the trade value that DeAndre Hopkins has.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the Cardinals' history for at least the last 23 years. It's not been very good. I mean, their standout has been Larry Fitzgerald. They got to a Super Bowl and an NFC, a couple NFC championship games, but that was few and far between. That was because they brought Kurt Warner in that couple of years, and then obviously Carson Palmer, like you said. Um, yeah, I'm not high on the Cardinals. Again, same thing with the defensive coordinator Gannon. I'm not very familiar with him. Obviously, coached a hell of a defense this year. But he's not going to have the same talent that he had in Philly, in Arizona. Um, yeah, I don't know what to think. I guess you're higher on it. I'm not that high on it. D Hop's on his way out. The Kyler's with the injury. I mean, they're kind of in a rebuild mode, but not in a rebuild mode because they have their quarterback, and so they're kind of in limbo
Happier.
right now for me.
I think they're going to go with a defensive lineman, whether it's Will Anderson out of Alabama, speedy edge rusher, doesn't have the most size, but really good athlete, or Jalen Carter out of Georgia. He is a 6'3" behemoth of a defensive end. I think the guy could be the best player from this draft class. I mean, Jalen Carter is from that Georgia defense that had a ton of stars on it. You could make the case he was the most impactful one with Jordan Davis and those boys. It was ridiculous, the defenses they've had. I think the Cardinals here go Jalen Carter. You hope that Isaiah Simmons can develop into that linebacker. You've seen some signs. They do have Xavier Collins at edge rusher. It's going to take some years, though, for them to actually rebuild that defense successfully. And until they do, I think the ceiling of Kyler Murray is 11 wins, first round exit every single season, because this team is not good. And you have a lot of work to do in the draft. You do hope that new management can do a much better job, because outside Kyler Murray, Steve Keim, they didn't really hit on enough draft picks. And that's really set them behind now with this new organizational transition. So we've talked about now the Super Bowl, those two teams. Is there anything else in the NFL that maybe I am missing one thing? Derek Carr is going to be released by the Raiders. Is it official yet,
Been
Brent?
released. He's
He's
been
been
released.
released. For how long? Couple days.
Couple hours.
Couple hours.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think.
So Derek Carr has been released by the Las Vegas Raiders. And J. Ray said it before, they're going to regret this move. And, remember when Carr said, if, look, I get traded, I'm not playing for any other organization? Maybe in some weird manner, this is him saying, hey, look, you're not trading me. I have a trade request. I have a no trade clause. I will request where I want to go. And what's going to happen here, Derek Carr? Who do you think will sign him? And what's going to be the fallout of this in Vegas?
Well, first off, gangster move by Derek. Very smart move too, savvy. He basically said, yeah, you're not trading me, so the team that I go to loses assets. You're gonna release me. Baller move there. Baller. Um, who do I think? I mean, the two top candidates that I saw in reports are the Panthers and the Saints. I think he had like a very extended meeting with the Saints too, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're probably maybe top of the line right now. I know some people said the Jets when this reports first came out a month ago or so.
Good
I
for
don't see
him.
the Jets anymore. I would have to say, due to reports, it's between the Panthers and the Saints, and it looks like it might be the Saints right now that are favorites because of that extended visit that he had.
Do you think those are the only AFC South teams that might be interested in Derek Carr's services?
I don't think they're the only ones. It's just the only teams that I saw reported. I'm
Hmm.
sure the Bucks would want him. I saw a report that the Bucks are interested in Jimmy G.
Yeah,
I'm sure the Falcons might be interested in him, but the two top teams that I saw were the Panthers and the
because
Saints.
The Buccaneers are a fascinating team in this mix. That
Yeah,
when they get Shaq Barrett back, we'll have one of the better defenses and probably a better offensive line this year than last year. So by Derek Carr doing this, the Raiders release him today, right before his $40 million guarantee kicks in. Good for Derek Carr. You know what? After all the disrespect that the Raiders had on this man, after the way the Raiders treated Derek Carr, all the disrespect, the struggles to build around him, frankly, the incompetence, he deserves way better. And now he's going to have a couple of options. The Jets, if they swing and miss on Aaron Rodgers, which they won't, but if they do, they have a great backup plan. You look at the Panthers now, an amazing coaching staff, I think. It's going to be one of the best in the NFC. And you also have an up and coming offensive line that is really good, a defense that has some real blue chip players. The Panthers can be an 11-win team next year in that division. And if you put Derek Carr in that offense with more and more draft picks, leveling up that offense with DJ Moore and Laviska Shenault's in the mix, you've got Terrace Marshall didn't get his opportunity until later in the year. I think the Panthers can be top 12, top 10. They can make an Eagles-like jump in 2021 where they won 9 games, maybe 10, get into the playoffs, and really surprise people. I think that's one of the main candidates to really take a big time jump. And if not, you can go to the Saints, where you get to reunite with Dennis Allen. How weird would that be? Allen was fired a couple of games into his rookie year, but at the very least, there are really good options out there. I want to see Carr in an environment where he'll be given a chance long term. And for the Panthers, it does make too much sense that Frank Reich would be interested in Carr because, like, Carr's not my type of quarterback. I'm not a big fan of his footwork. It's a little bit messy in the pocket, but he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And
yeah,
you can't miss on a guy like him that's just turning 30 years old and has in the past had top 10 quarterback seasons.
yeah. He's an above average quarterback, not incredibly above average, but he's an above average quarterback. Um, yeah, another team just popped into my head that needs a quarterback, Washington. The Giants maybe if they don't want to spend that money that Daniel Jones is apparently asking for, which is just God. I really need a team to just create a mid-tier quarterback contract because it's just insanely tiring to see these below average quarterbacks or average quarterbacks get this insane amount of money. It's ridiculous. So maybe they take a shot on him. There's a bunch of teams that could take a shot, could use a Derek Carr. I mean, Derek Carr walks in the NFC. He's a top 5 quarterback in that division. I mean, conference easily. Muted, John.
He might be top three, depending on how Stafford's,
Yeah. It
spine
has
and
to do. Yeah, there's a
elbow.
couple things that got to work out with injury wise. Kyler, Stafford, Rogers is retreat.
Dark.
Dark, dark retreat. Hey,
It's,
man,
it's
just let him love. Love. You got love and respect. Remember the tweet? Love, respect, man.
Oh, the tweet that
Respect the
Aaron
gentleman.
Rodgers had responding to what NFL player was that? Do you remember?
Oh, God, I forgot his name.
Well,
I
yeah,
think he's
since
a
Aaron
pirate.
Rodgers' cell data is probably low, I'm sure it's probably the first tweet in his profile, so we can check right now.
Oh, it was the first tweet in a long because I'm like, I do not see Aaron Rodgers be tweeting. So I looked and he hadn't tweeted in like months, I think.
Aaron Schwartz, Mitchell Schwartz.
Mitchell Schwartz, former Chiefs tackle
Be
guy.
curious, Brandon, not judgmental.
Be curious, not judgmental. I like that line. I
I,
like
I
that, Aaron.
love Aaron.
He's very philosophical, isn't
Smart man.
he? He's smart,
Great
man.
quarterback.
Went to Cal.
Yeah, what a fit he would be them. Mike, not Mike. The New York Football
No,
Jets and
no,
Robert Saleh. I
no.
almost called Robert Saleh Mike LaFleur right there, which is former offensive coordinator, not the right name, John. So with all that being said, is there anything else in the NFL? Because we're about take a full 180 to the NBA, where we have a couple of things to
No, I
discuss.
think I mean I want to touch on this just a tad. I think Andy Reid already said I know it was kind of probably after the game, so emotions were high, and maybe there's a discussion he needs to have even more with his family and with himself inward. But Jay Glazer before the game reported that Andy Reid said on the topic of retirement, it's a conversation that will be had after the season. I don't know. He's 64. You know, he doesn't seem like he's losing anything. He seems like he could still go for a long time. Um, who knows? Maybe it's a discussion he has with his family and he does step away. I do think 100% that changes the outlook for this Chiefs team if Andy Reid walks away. And if you don't think so, look at the Saints without Sean Payton. Look at the Bucks without Bruce Arians. I can keep going on and on and on.
I mean, especially if it's later in the hiring process. Patrick Mahomes is a 27-year-old. Superstar would be an understatement of a word. Patrick Mahomes is one of the two greatest quarterbacks I have ever seen. And the other quarterback is Tom Brady. In terms of who is the better player. So to have him in the middle of his prime with a ton of rookies, Kadarius Toney, we didn't really give him enough credit. Phenomenal play, phenomenal punt return, phenomenal young team is what they're building in Kansas City with a great GM in Brett Veach. The Chiefs are the model organization, and Andy Reid has laid that foundation. If he does retire, Eric Bieniemy would probably be promoted to that head coaching role. I don't know how big of a role he has in the play calling process, but he does have some. I feel like the Chiefs for a while now have kind of wanted to get rid of him, get him into another place where he hasn't gotten the head coaching opportunity. But now for Kansas City, you're looking at Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid is not only the best play designer in football, I think he has a real case of being the best coach currently, 24 years in. And he's now going to his 11th season if he does stay in Kansas City. It's been almost over a decade now,
Yeah.
which
I
doesn't
mean,
sound right.
yeah, an incredible 180 from the career that he did have coming into Kansas City because Andy was always known as the guy who couldn't win the big game.
Yeah,
So a complete 180. I mean, him and Patrick Mahomes changed each other's lives, really.
yeah,
Mahomes came in and was a complete project. There were people like Chris Carter and even Shannon Sharp, who is now the biggest Mahomes boy, his nickname fan out there. You can go look it up. It's on YouTube of when Mahomes was drafted. Both were questionable. Now their question marks were valid. You know, Chris Carter and Shannon brought up. You know, I forget. Was he in the Pac-12, John? Right? Or big? What was he in? What
at
college?
Texas Tech, what conference? I should
I
know that.
forget. They said the conference and that conference is not known for its defenses and the quarterbacks producing and
Big 12.
um you know progressing in the NFL. So they had good solid points. But listen, both guys changed each other's careers. Andy Reid is now looked at. I mean, people are talking about him. Should he be in the one of the greatest coaches of all time conversation? This was 10 years ago. That wouldn't you'd be laughed at for that statement.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, yeah, with Sean Payton gone, John, I think you're 100% right. I think Andy Reid is the if not the best, he is literally right there. I can't think of another one right off the top of my head right now that's on his play calling level. I know McDaniels is incredible. His head coaching prowess is just not on Andy's level.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Andy does walk away. I know I forget who freaking said it on ESPN, but somebody said this, and he made a good point, but I had a instant point to debate it back. They said you don't if you're Andy Reid, you cannot walk away from, like you said, Johnny, 27-year-old in the prime superstar talent like a Patrick Mahomes. You can't. And my argument would be you don't know the conversations that Andy is having at home. You know, maybe it's time. Maybe he wants to spend more time with his family and whatnot. That would be the only reason you would walk away is family. But it doesn't look like, he wants to out. It looks like he's having probably most fun of his entire career. I mean, we see the quotes after the games, the pizzas, the burger. I just love a good cheeseburger.
How about them? Jeez.
No, John, don't do that. Don't do that. That's disrespectful.
No, I'm not mocking him. That's how they go. How about them cheese?
No, I'm saying you're disrespecting the Cowboys because you know that's their saying. All right.
Oh, well, now the Cowboys. Okay. I don't care about the Cowboys. They haven't done enough. How many Super Bowls the Cowboys won in the last 4 years? None. How many they won in the last 20 years? None. How many won in the last 25 years? Let me think. None. So
Zero.
let's
Yeah.
give the Chiefs some credit here. If you win
I
that
give
many
it
Super
credit.
Bowls, if you go that many
100%.
Super Bowls, how about those? I think it's how about those Chiefs. Maybe it's how about them. Whoever, whatever it is.
All I know is Andy Reid likes a good cheeseburger. All right, he does. He said it. Another thing, though, too. Kelsey, 34 in October. No signs of slowing down, right? I mean, I'm not crazy. I have eyeballs that I can see things.
Seventh straight season with 1,000 yards.
Yeah, on track. A lot of people are talking about him could be the greatest tight end of all time. But don't forget this, John, and I did forget. The AFC Championship game, he was a game time decision with his back. 34 is 34. No
Mm-hmm.
sign of slowing down, but you never know when that wall is going to hit. So I'm
Until it
hoping for the
does.
best for all these guys, and I think they are going to produce. I'm not going to predict that Travis Kelce is going to fall off a cliff, but you just never know in the NFL. That's all in sports, and you'd never know.
Yeah,
That's all I
and
got to say on the NFL now.
outside of Brady, Gronk, and Belichick, because they're probably the greatest trio I've seen, I have not seen something quite like Mahomes, Kelsey, and Reed. Because we had Tyreek Hill in that mix, that quartet. But this trio here is now won a Super Bowl by itself, and we didn't really talk about Mahomes in this episode. Can we acknowledge the fact that Patrick Mahomes came back from down 10 points in the Super Bowl with one leg, and that wasn't even one of his three greatest comebacks in 5 years starting in the NFL? Think about how crazy
It's
that
insane.
is.
It's insane. We know how great Mahomes is. We all know. I would say the Dallas Cowboys of the '90s: Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, Emmett Smith, Michael Irvin. That's a pretty good trio.
True.
There's been some, but yeah,
I was
no, the
thinking of the
Chiefs.
tight end specifically, but
Yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah, probably Shanahan, Elway, Sharp, and TD.
mhm.
But the Chiefs they're on their way, man. They're on their way. They have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Let's not get ahead of the curve. But they
Where
are on their way.
exactly?
They're
They
on the
got
right
this
track.
young secondary. They've got these awesome linebackers and
They've got a lot
Bolton,
of work to do.
Legay. Where? They have work to do.
No, in terms of the longevity being in those deeper discussions and really cementing that, like there's a while. I truly believe there's a while to go, but that's a discussion
Is
about dynasties that we're gonna have very soon.
five straight AFC Championship games not enough for you?
It's
Two
not a
Super Bowls.
dynasty.
Well, I mean that's. I think you compare it all to the Patriots, and the Patriots are the
No,
greatest
I don't.
dynasty.
I don't compare it to the Patriots. We'll have that discussion on Thursday with Justin.
We,
Don't worry.
we will, and I think the Chiefs are in prime position next year to, even with Sean Payne in their division, same time, same place, Arrowhead Stadium. Yeah, Trent McDuffie. You have Legere Sneed at cornerback.
He
That
made a terrible
secondary is.
play. Oh, on that AJ Brown touchdown, John Trent McDuffie. Thank you for reminding me. What a terrible play on the ball. I mean, God.
I also think AJ Brown, his ability to track in space is pretty good too. So that was a great play by AJ Brown, but McDuffie is one hell of a player that
He
had
did make
exceeded
some
my
good plays.
expectations
Yeah,
going to
he did.
Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, George Karlaftis. I didn't even realize that Frank Clark, after his first year in Kansas City, is top four all time in postseason sacks, but he is, which is pretty cool. That Chiefs defense, it will get better with more draft picks. And I don't know if there's been a more model franchise over the last 7 years. The pivots they've made, the coaching, and the star power, it's to me been a dynasty, but we'll have that discussion for another day. Moving on to the NBA, I mean, we've been going for an hour and a half now, but we didn't get to talk about the second half of the NBA trade deadline. We
Yes.
also did not get to discuss the new Zion Williamson update. Which one would you like to start off with first?
Let's talk a little. I think it'll be quick. Let's talk Zion and his continuous problems.
I hate they word it like that. So
Oh,
Zion Williamson's been out
unfortunate
since
events. Then
the first week of January with a right hamstring injury. And a couple days ago on February 12th, Woj gave us the update that he's going to miss a couple more weeks after a setback in his recovery process, playing 3-on-3. And now for a Pelican team that has lost 10 of their last 15 games, or maybe it was more, they're on a 10-game losing streak in the middle of January without Zion, when Brandon Ingram was coming back off of a toe contusion. Zion's probably going to be out for at least 3 more weeks after the All-Star break. And now you're looking at a Western Conference where Karl Anthony Towns is coming back. The Lakers got a lot better. The Mavs got Kyrie. The Suns got Kevin Durant. And with 12 teams trying to make the playoffs, somebody's going to fall out. And the Pelicans, who were the number one seed a month and a half ago, are now one of those teams that's looking like they're in dire straits.
I don't know what to say anymore, John, except for that the way Zion's career is going is he's going to be one of the biggest what ifs, one of the biggest what ifs, and I don't like saying that because he's an incredible talent. We all know how incredible. I mean, in his second season, he was averaging 28 points a game. That that's insane. Okay,
On
on
61% true
60%.
shooting.
Yes, I mean, oh Jesus Christ, dude. But I think we all know.
65% true shooting.
Yeah, I think we all know the problem though that we've all lamented is, and I hate to bring it up, but I think it's the weight. Like you can't be too. He's listed at 284 pounds right now on ESPN.com, so you can give or take, right? And maybe it doesn't all have to do with the weight. Maybe it just has to do with he doesn't all that explosion, that bounce coming down. Because dude, if
Power.
you're that close to 300 pounds and you're up and you're down and you're up and you're running back and
Like
forth,
basketball.
cut side to side, diagonal, all over the place. You're coming down with so much force. You're jumping up with so much force and ferocity. It takes a toll. And I don't know what it is. Maybe he needs to get a better nutritionist. Maybe he needs to get a better trainer, whatever, but he needs to start figuring this out because this is not good. This is possibly worst case scenario that the Pelicans feared for when drafting Zion Williamson. And I think everybody hates to say it, but it is the truth. We all just want to see him out there playing basketball because he's that goddamn good. But it's just, I mean, he's gonna start being talked about with those what ifs. It's not good.
I'm not a doctor, but it's all been his it's all been his right posterior chain. Right meniscus, right foot, and right hamstring. Meniscus sidelined him for most of his rookie season. His second year, played most of the year. Third season, obviously has some setbacks with the foot injury. I think what kind of sucks, I'm not going to be one that's going to complain about injuries. Zion's handled this very well emotionally, and you mentioned maybe getting a better nutritionist. No, he's put in the work to get into the best shape. I think the issue is we often see with athletes, their biggest strength can often be their biggest enemy. Russell Westbrook, phenomenal athlete, but he never developed his skill set, his skill level, because how much we rely on that. Zion Williamson gives me appreciation for a guy like LeBron James, who is strong and powerful enough, but also has the right build so where he's durable long term. Zion is a wrecking ball in the paint, and I have never seen an athlete, even looking at Charles Barkley back 25 years ago, Shaquille O'Neal would be the one player where his bounce, his assertiveness, and his athleticism is unrivaled. And no matter who you put on him, he is a battering ram going to the rim. He doesn't even need to dunk the ball. His touch around the rim is elite. Elite would be an understatement. And he's also developed so much as a playmaker to where he doesn't need to develop the three-point shot because he creates so many looks for his teammates. The issue is that because of how powerful he is and how much weight, how much mass he has, basketball, a sport where you're always jumping, always running, and always stopping, it becomes a lot harder to play in an 82 game regular season where the NBA does something that I strongly disagree with, Brandon, and that's having a season of which it is way too long for athletes to be durable. I don't get mad at Zion at this point. I don't get mad at Kawhi. I don't get mad at Anthony Davis. Because when you expect these high profile athletes, year in and year out, through playoff series, international cups, you go to Japan for the Olympics, and all of these off-season workouts they're going through to consistently play 82 games in the regular season is physically impossible. It won't happen. And so when you play these 25 filler games in the regular season where at least one of the two teams is missing one of their top two players, the product of the NBA gets so much worse. And a lot of these games, I love basketball. I don't even watch because Brandon Ingram's out, Zion's out. For the Pelicans, they're one of the franchises that has been hit hard by injuries. Hard. Drew Holiday, Eric Gordon, Anthony Davis, and now with Zion Williamson, we're saying the same thing. I don't like putting so much blame on the athletes. I like to put the blame on the NBA because it is unacceptable to have an 82 game season expecting these high profile stars to then play in the playoffs. It can't happen. They know it can't happen. But with these new TV deals coming in, they're looking at it like, yeah, it's more money. Let's do it. The NFL had the 17th game, but with the NBA, I'm looking at them, it's like, what if you shorten the season to 60 games, right?
Mm.
Maybe 55. And then you have this in season tournament that really drives home the competitive tone
Mhm.
in February. Now, NBA fans love basketball because we're out to the Super Bowl and you've got an in season tournament, then you've got the All Star break. I think the problem here isn't necessarily the players. A lot of it should go in the league because Zion playing every other night, he needs more recovery. All these athletes do. And I think it's a little bit unfair. While they make a ton of money, to the long term durability of these players. And like I said before, in some ways, I think it's BS, to be honest with you.
No, I 100% agree with you. I'm not going to argue with that. I would much prefer a shorter regular season. Makes the games much more important and impactful and must watch. Yeah, makes you appreciate those guys back in the day in the 90s and 80s and 70s that played those 82 games or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the fortune of the science and advanced technology that the athletes of today have. You
Yeah.
know, I think to MJ, this is one thing that is a feather in his cap for being the GOAT. 82 games, a lot. 80 plus games, a lot. It's and he was doing he did do the dream team. He did play those years, so it's crazy. We've seen it with Larry Bird broke down, Charles Barkley, Shaq. We've seen it all, but comes with the territory. I don't think the NBA is going to change. It's a sad
I
thing to
think they
see
will.
because
I actually think
you know what? I hope. I really do hope. I hope and I beg honestly because I think it is. If they actually do sit down and somebody would just and if they can just take off those goddamn money goggles for 1 second and just listen to somebody, all right, explain it very clear and precise to them, that it would be so much better for the game. All
Mhm.
right, you would get more viewers and all this stuff, but
and
they
to
don't. All they see, John, all they see is the money bags.
and
That's
to
all they see.
elaborate on that, it's not like all these injuries are torn ACLs, and it's a lot of it's soft tissue. Zion's a hamstring. With Anthony Davis, it's wear and tear in his foot. With Kawhi, it's an ACL. But with Jamal Murray, same thing. With LeBron James, it's wear and tear in your feet, your hamstrings. Devin Booker is a top 12 player. For the last year and a half, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. The same thing can be said of Bradley Beal. The inflammation for Jamal Murray coming off a torn ACL, I think you can subsidize a lot of, I guess you would say, the lack of availability by just driving home the product of a 60 game season opposed to an 82. And as a basketball fan, it would make me really happy. And that relates to Zion because I don't know how Zion is going to have a Hall of Fame career. Like, Zion is yet to play in the playoffs. Zion is in his fourth season. And if the Pelicans miss it this year, we're going to see just 90 games of one of the best duos in the league, that being Bi and Zoe, or Lonzo. So, Bi and Zion, two top 20 players. I think Brandon Ingram's top 25. I think Zion's top 20. And yeah, it's only going to be a matter of time here until we get a clearer picture in the playoffs. And I think for this Pelican team, they had a big win last night because Brandon Ingram's been playing so well. They really need some. They need some health here. They need some luck because they've been beaten and battered this year by injuries. Now moving on, NBA trade deadline. I got a couple of moves to discuss, Brandon. Particularly, you're a Clipper fan. You're a Kawhi fan, right? And at the deadline, they made a couple of pretty massive moves, moving the likes of John Wall and Reggie Jackson, both of whom were bought out. Of course, the Rockets were the team to acquire Wall again. They also acquired a second-year guard from the Nuggets, Bones Highland, who he actually took a slight little jab at Jamal Murray in a presser, along with Mason Plumlee from the Hornets via the Reggie Jackson move for one second-round pick, and Eric Gordon from the Rockets in exchange for a couple of second-rounders, and Luke Kennard, who'll be going to Memphis. Does Eric Gordon, Mason Plumlee, and Bones Highland move enough for a Clipper team that, you can never have too much depth, but, what's your takeaway on them?
So I'm not that familiar with Bones Highland. I've heard a couple of people talk about him. I heard some people have a lot of high praise for him and believe that he can be a pretty damn good player. That he just wasn't given the minutes. I like EG. EG's a volume shooter. He's very sporadic, but he can give you those big games. Plumlee, I like that move. That's a nice backup big for Zubac. If Zubac, gets injured or gets in foul trouble, you got one. And if you're going into the playoffs, you might see a Jokic. I would imagine Zubac is probably going to get into foul trouble, so it's very good to have a guy like Mason Plumlee you can plug right in and he can do some dirty work. So I like the moves. It wasn't the move obviously that I was campaigning for, Fred VanVleet. But they made some good moves. I think they improved. Um, but yeah, it just has to, they just have to play together now, get the chemistry like we've all been saying, and I think they'll be fine. I do.
Yeah, you wanted Fred VanVleet to the Clippers, playing with Kawhi, and the report was that the Clippers weren't willing to move off their current starting point guard, Terrence Mann, who is not really a point guard, he's a wing. Mann's a good player. He's a
I
good
don't
role
care.
player, but
Cool. That's good, but he's not Fred VanVleet. You're
no.
trying to win a championship, man.
Well, I mean, to Steve Ballmer's credit, he's put them in this position. It was a matter of, I don't know. I actually don't know because the Raptors wanted a player and a pick. The Clippers were willing to do the pick part, but they weren't willing to do the young player. Um, I don't know. Lawrence Frank's a pretty good GM.
Terrence Mann's not going to change life, man. He's not. Fred VanVleet can change life for you right now.
Unless you're
Okay,
playing
because
Rudy
you
Gobert in the
just
playoffs, he might.
you just saw what the Suns did. Okay, you saw the Mavs add up. All right, you can't be left behind. And I love the Clippers. I still believe in them, but I really think that they missed not getting, especially
Yeah.
giving up Terrence Mann, who he is a good player, but
Oh
again,
yeah.
this is a star-driven league, and we need a guy like Fred VanVleet who is proven and has played with Kawhi in the biggest stages and made some big-time shots.
And I think I know why. This is why the Clippers didn't move man. Their general manager, Lawrence Frank, is a smart man. And one of his preferences was a player that can't get played off the floor. Fred VanVleet is a really good defender, but he's 6 feet and you can shoot right over him. Terrence Mann is a 6'7" wing that can play make, terrific in transition. He's a developed 3-point shooter, and he's kind of the ideal glue guy that you can't play off the floor. Whereas VanVleet, if he's not making shots, he'll be on the bench. So I think that's the reason why they decided to hold on to Mann and really they held on to that pick for a future move that may be better. And the other thing is that Van Vliet's gonna have to get paid a lot of money. And the Clippers, if they acquired him, they would have had his bird rights. They could have gave him a long-term extension, but because they're deep into the luxury tax, because they don't have that flexibility, they can't sign him outright in free agency. So I think that it's punted all together in the idea of Van Vliet, though he would have been an upgrade. So what would you grade the Clippers' moves? Bones Highland's a spark plug, kind of like Reggie Jackson stylistically, but he's 20 and actually a little bit cheaper. 22. 22.
I'd give it a solid thumbs up. I think that they improved slightly. So yeah, good moves.
Agreed. I think that Clippers bench could beat a lot of rebuilding teams. So you've got
Oh, yeah.
Bones Island at point guard, Eric Gordon and Norman Powell is a six-man of the year candidate on the wings, Nick Batum, who's taken a step back, he's an old man, but good glue guy, and Mason Plumlee at center, who's like a really annoying player to watch. I hate watching him play. He changed his shooting form to his left hand, and I'll be honest with you, it is ugly watching him take. He actually does make his hook shots and his jump hooks, but I just want to rip my eyes out of my socket watching him shoot. And he's also a great passer. I think that Clippers team could beat the Rockets, maybe the Pistons. Who else? Not the Magic, not the Raptors. Maybe on a bad night they could beat the Wizards without Bradley Beal with that lineup. I don't know. So we talked about them a little bit. There's one compelling question in the Western Conference, right? Who's going to come out? Is it going to be the Nuggets? Is it going to be the Suns? Is it going to be the Clippers or the Mavs? I've got an even better question though for you, Brandon. The Bucks added Jay Crowder at the deadline for 5 second-round picks, a lot of seconds. I think there are 2 more included in that exchange, maybe. And all they sent out was Serge Ibaka's contract, George Hill, and Jordan Nwora who didn't play. The Bucks and Celtics play tonight at 7:30. By the time this goes out, the game will already be played. Who do you think is going to come out the Eastern Conference this year? If Chris Middleton's healthy, Milwaukee or Boston?
Both teams fully healthy. Boston Celtics are the better team. I
Really?
believe. I think that Giannis is the best player on the court.
Hmm.
but I do believe the Celtics are the best overall team. Um, I think they're slightly deeper. I believe in like I say, Giannis is the best player, but then you got Jalen. I mean, sorry, Jason, Jalen.
Marcus.
Then you'd probably put Middleton, Marcus Smart's right there too. So there's some
Drew Holiday.
players right there. Yeah, Holiday too.
I'm a
I like the Celtics. I like the way they play, man. I think they play together. I think they've really found themselves. They can switch on almost anybody.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm sticking with the Celtics coming out of the East.
You
I
know,
have to. I don't think Jay Crowder was this. While it's a good move and he is a tone setter and he can knock down 3-pointers and he can play some tough physical defense. It's not like he's not PJ Tucker. Let's not kid
are you
ourselves, right?
sure? He's a better shooter than Tucker and a better floor spacer. You at least have to
Yes,
play him.
yes, 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 yes. Overall, yes. From the corner, PJ is better, but yes, overall, yeah. But defensively and the tenacity and the intangible stuff, I think PJ is better than Jay Crowder.
I'll be
Not by a
honest.
lot, not leaps and bounds, but I would take PJ for my money.
I think the Bucks might be mopping the floor in that series, Brent. It's kind of funny. The Celtics are an elite shooting team. The Bucks are an inside team, and their weaknesses are the other strength. So, Jason Tatum, we saw last year, struggled with physicality against Draymond Green and the Warriors. If you put Jay Crowder on if you put Jay Crowder on Jason Tatum, you've got Drew Holiday to match up on a Jalen Brown, getting into his pocket, really underneath him. I think Jalen Brown would have a hard time. But you've also got an incredible athlete in Marjon Beauchamp off the bench who can play 10 minutes. You've got Pat Connaughton. You've got Chris Middleton, who's a plus defender. And with Giannis Antetokounmpo at free safety, I think Jason Tatum would have fits in that series because you have better shooters in Jay and Chris on the floor. So now you can go with a better defensive lineup. And also, Brook Lopez this year has been what is now the number one candidate for Defensive Player of the Year on NBA.com. Last year, coming off back surgery, he was not himself. And you've also got the I almost cursed. You can't overlook Giannis when he has a full supporting cast. And last year they took the Celtics to 7 without Chris Middleton playing a single game. Now Middleton this year is playing just 13 games, but the Bucks are now on a 10-game heater. This team is the best in the Eastern Conference because they have the best player, the best defense, and it's close between them and Cleveland. Cleveland's really good defensively, and I think they have the best formula. When Middleton is healthy and Drew Holiday is the third piece, and you add in Jay Crowder in that PJ Tucker role, I'm sorry. You keep Grayson Allen off the bench. You have Joe Ingles now to run some pick and roll with Giannis. I mean, there is nothing this Bucks team is missing when it's all clicking. But with the Celtics, we still have those playoff concerns with Jason Tatum. For as great a player as he is in the regular season, when you go up against a defense like that, you see what happened last year in the finals, where
Yeah,
Tatum looked
no,
like a shell of himself.
yeah, they couldn't go left.
Yeah.
But I just listen. I'm not saying the Celtics are going to blow the Bucks out of the water. I believe it would be a 7-game series and a
Yeah.
tough, hard fought 7-game
A
series.
rock fight.
Yeah. I just would favor the Celtics just slightly. And I know you bring up can't count out Giannis with a fully loaded uh, um supporting cast. John, I know you like to bring this up. We've had a couple of very heated debates about it. You like to say that Kevin Durant almost single-handedly beat that fully supported cast of Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Kevin Durant's top 15 player of all time at his peak power.
I'm
Jason
just saying.
Tatum. If Tatum's lucky, he'll get into the top 30 all time.
Yeah, I know, but Tatum's not alone. He's got a crew behind him too. He's got a pretty damn good crew behind him. And Marcus Smart, I don't think he's back, right?
No, he's missed some
Smart's
time.
not back. Jalen just got injured.
Yeah, the
It's
fish.
only a facial fracture, so it's not going to affect like his movement or anything like that.
Hmm.
But it'll be back, so it'll be easier. What I'm saying, it'll be easier for him when he comes back in to get more acclimated. So yeah, Al Horford. I don't know if he's in and out of the lineup, but
Hmm.
and also you mentioned Brook Lopez is number one. I saw that exact same thing, John.
Hmm.
You seem to forget that the number 3 guy on that list is a guy who plays for the Boston Celtics by the name of Robert Williams III. So it's not like he's that
Wait,
far off.
are you serious?
I'm pretty sure, unless I saw a different uh uh
Because Time Lord's playing 22 games.
Number three, 1, 2, and 3. He was number 3 on that list, unless I saw a different list. But
I think you might be looking at last year's list where he finished top 3.
no, because I saw Brook Lopez was number 1 on the list.
Okay, let's see
Not
where
looking at
Bryce
last
is.
year's list.
Because Robert Williams is blasphemous in top 3. He hasn't even played he's played a third of this year's games almost. I would imagine it is Brook Lopez number 1, Nick Claxton maybe number 2, and Jared Allen number 3. Evan Mobley an honorable mention. Jaren Jackson an honorable mention. Jaren's my defensive player of the year, but he's also missed half of the season, which is why he would probably not be above Brook Lopez, who's played the majority of the season. Any day now, NBA.com. Once, twice. It's not loading. The Celtics are a great team, but I think in the playoff crucible, what we underrate is competitive stamina. And I think with that Bucks team, they have too much toughness and just enough skill offensively to win in the half court. And if Chris Middleton is healthy, which is a massive on an expiring contract here,
I'm gonna
I
be
don't
honest.
think Grant Williams can do it again. I do not think he can do it a second time around. And what would be part 4 between these two teams, right? They play each other in 2017. They play each other in 2018, and 2019, and 2022.
I'm gonna be honest. You bring up the competitive fervor. No one will ever question Giannis's competitiveness. I'm one of the biggest Giannis fans out here. That guy is built different, and I love the way he goes about his business in the NBA nowadays. I wish more players were actually like him.
You see the report that Giannis didn't even know? He hasn't had social media, so the only trade he saw is Jay Crowder to his team. Not KD, not Kyrie, not D'Lo, just Jay Crowder.
I'm not surprised. But this is one thing that I've heard before is that some people Jason Tatum's a very nice guy, right? He might be a little too nice. Where Giannis is a very nice guy too, but when he gets on that court, you're his enemy. He got that dog in him. And I think that's kind of what you're speaking to. If it isn't what you're speaking to exactly, Jason Tatum needs to show he's got that dog in him. I think Jalen Brown has that dog in him. I need to see Jason Tatum have that.
Yeah, the word used was competitive stamina.
Yeah. Competitive fervor, I think it's kind of the same. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Semantics.
One more series. We got the Clippers and the Warriors tonight. No Steph Curry, but Klay Thompson's been on a heater now. He's been on a heater now. Oh, Klay Thompson hater right here. The biggest hater, according to you. According to you, I'm the biggest hater. Thompson.
He taught him. Make an L, hand in the cookie jar. Hand in the cookie jar.
Yes. That's good. You do a lot of editing. This is good to mitigate that wrist thing. I forget what it's called.
Carpal tunnel?
Carpal tunnel. Thank you. That's a good stretch. Suns, Kings tonight. Real quick here. We talked a lot about the Kevin Durant trade. Your team out the Western Conference, Brandon, with Kevin Durant going to Phoenix, Kyrie Irving going to Dallas, and D'Angelo Russell going to LA is who?
I'm sticking with my preseason pick, the Los Angeles Clippers. I ain't hopping off.
Kawhi Leonard now. He's been playing well, but
you want to know what I tweeted, John? I tweeted this. I thought it was pretty slick. I tweeted when KD went to the Suns. I said, "Oh boy, Kawhi is going to have to rewrite a wronged history that he was so close to doing first off. I think he's going to do it this time." Because I truly do believe that that Spurs team was going to take that Warriors team down their first year. All right, people forget they were up 24, 27 points in the third quarter before Kawhi went down. In the Oracle, by the way. Okay? Now he's got another chance, and I think he's going to do it this time.
That would be interesting. If we're going to come back to reality real quick, I think the Suns are winning that series. Just because, I don't know if Kawhi is going to play well enough. We'll see.
The super team Suns, John? The super team Suns are...
They're not a super team.
They're not a super team.
End that right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We had this debate. I was basically saying Chris Paul may get put on the bench to close games in the playoffs, and people didn't really appreciate that. Look,
no, they didn't because
you're talking to a massive Chris Paul fan. I had him.
No, we're not. It's not like
I had him above the much loved John Stockton. I think Paul is a great player, but in his age 37 season, if you can't...
Don't let him fool you, people. Don't let him fool you. We've had many of conversations in when we were in school together, and he was Chris Paul was so far down that list you couldn't even see him. All right.
Yeah, so Brandon had him in his top 10. I had him in my top
Yeah,
20.
because I had him in the top 10 because of the impact he made everywhere he went. All
Yeah,
right. When he
just like
got to
Jay Crowder.
Houston,
Just
when he
like
got to
Jay
Houston,
Crowder and PJ Tucker.
get off here. No, don't do that. That's bad.
Uh, oh, I was going to ask you this one question. So it's a little bit
Yeah.
random. You're a massive Kawhi Leonard fan. I
Yeah.
want to take you back to the year 2016.
Okay.
The Warriors won 73 games. It was Kevin Durant's last year in Oklahoma City.
Mhm.
Kawhi's last, I guess, second to last regular season in San Antonio when they won 67 games. In that time, I remember having a conversation with my brother, and it's something that's always come back to me. LeBron was the best player in the world, and we saw that in that year's finals. But who was the second best player?
Mhm. I don't believe Kawhi became the second best until the year after. Um, when he did when the team basically finally became his, because if I'm not mistaken, that team Duncan had retired, I believe, right?
hmm
He might have came back. He retired after the finals, right?
Duncan retired after 2016, the 67 win campaign.
Okay, so so that's what, okay, my timeline's right. So yeah, the year after it finally became Kawhi's team. It
hmm
was the Kawhi and LaMarcus Aldridge, but it was Kawhi's team. That's when I firmly believed Kawhi was the second best player in the world
Yeah.
and that he was on track to take the throne from LeBron as the best player in the world until injuries told a different story.
Okay. So we'll fast forward to 2017. Kawhi is age 25 season on a 61 win Spurs team.
Yes.
That was the second best player after LeBron James.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. I think Kawhi should have won MVP that season, not Russell Westbrook. And this is a conversation a lot of people are gonna get upset over. Kawhi was the best defensive player,
Mm-hmm.
unarguably the best defensive team.
Okay.
Kawhi was also averaging 26 points per game
Mhm.
on high level shooting
Yes.
in 2017. Right?
Mhm.
Russell Westbrook, not a quality shooter for
No.
high volume. And Kawhi was right around 49% and a career high at that point. Well, actually, a second best season, 38% from deep. I
Yeah.
felt like that was Kawhi's year to win the award because of how good the Spurs were. Now I'm trying to find his second defensive player of the year season. That's why I'm pausing here. Stalling a little bit because basketball reference is not doing me
I think that
justice.
was the year before. I think it was the 67 win team. I think he won back to back, if I'm not
He
mistaken.
did.
Yeah.
So Kawhi won defensive player of the year in 2015 and
Mm.
2016. In 2017 was Draymond Green, Kevin Durant's first year. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like Kawhi was the third best player. I feel like Kevin Durant at the time was the second best player in the world, but
Hmm.
Kawhi was so underappreciated because of how boring those Spurs teams were.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this question partially because this conversation always comes back to my mind when we talk about KD versus Kawhi, right?
Hmm.
5 years ago, top five players in the world. You know, in 2017, I think some people thought Kyrie was a top five player after that finals run he had
Yeah.
LeBron. LeBron James number one, Kevin Durant number two, Kawhi number three, James Harden.
No,
No, I'm fine.
Steph.
I'm fine. I'm
Steph.
fine. So LeBron number one, Kevin Durant number two, Steph Curry number three, Kawhi number four, James
Hmm.
Harden number five, Anthony Davis number six. And then we get to some guys like Jimmy Butler. DeMarcus Cousins wasn't quite in that camp, but Kyrie Irving,
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, he was a top 10 player. Paul George. Um,
I'm
yeah,
trying to
let's just
remember them. Yeah.
add the top
No,
10.
for me
Oh,
at
and
that
Russell Westbrook,
list, yeah, for my list, it was LeBron, Kawhi, Steph, KD.
too.
I didn't have maybe at that time I did have Harden in my top 10, but there were
Mm.
a lot of years where I didn't have Harden in my top 10. And it's simply because he was very inefficient. And he didn't show up in the
We can just
playoffs.
leave it at that. He doesn't have a playoff resume
Okay.
7 years later.
you know,
I don't think the inefficiency is my gripe. I think it's the fact his team is
that's
just.
just one of the gripes that I had with him is just the inefficiency was just
I
terrible.
think that's where the Harden conversation ends, and I don't want to spend too much time here.
Yeah. Okay. Let's.
Let's cut it right there then. Anything else for the NBA? Because we had to discuss big time Saturday fight night. Nope. UFC
No.
284 brand, a little bit of controversy, some interesting fights in Australia, Perth. What's going on here? What's the conversation?
So quickly, the co-main event was for the interim featherweight championship. Yair Rodriguez taking on Josh Emmett. Yair came out like a bat out of hell. Absolutely coming in fast, keeping Josh Emmett at kicking distance and really lighting him up with the body kicks, leg kicks, high kicks. Emmett landed a good shot. Was able to rock Yair, but after that, Yair just completely took over and was able to get the finish. And he is now your new UFC interim UFC featherweight champion. Now we move on to the main event. Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion, taking on Islam Makhachev, the lightweight champion. Number 1 versus number 2 pound for pound fighter in the world right now. In Volk's home country of Australia. So the controversy surrounding this, John, is a lot of people believe that Volkanovski was robbed. Here's how I was watching the fight. First round comes out. Alex is doing pretty good. It's kind of like, just feeling each other out, stalemates here and there. I had Islam taking that round. He was able to kind of take over in the later minutes of that round. So I had him taking that round 1. Round 2 was a little bit closer. I'll get back to round 2. Actually, I'm going to circle back to round 2. So then round 3 was clearly Volk, right? He was able to control a lot of what was going on in there, land some pretty big shots. I wish he would have thrown more leg kicks because leg kicks that he did throw had major impact, especially one of them that really wobbled Islam off of his almost off of his feet. So Volk and Islam had round 1, no question. Volk had round 3, no question. Round 4, Volk did pretty good work in about the first minute and a half. Then Islam was able to get the takedown in a beautiful takedown attempt. It was just perfectly timed and executed. And was able to basically backpack him for about 3 minutes left in that round. Didn't do much. Kind of tried to threaten the submissions. Really wasn't. Just kind of kept position. Wasn't landing any shots whatsoever. Volk was actually the one landing shots, but they weren't significant. They were just little pitter-patter shots. They had a little verbal exchange while Islam had his back. Volk was like kind of trying to fire him up, saying, let's effing go. Come on, try to get the finish. You called me short guy. You said you were going to finish me. You're going to dig me into drag me in the deep waters. You're just chilling here. Come on, finish the fight. So Islam was able to secure round 4. No questions asked. Round 5 came along. This was Volk's best round. Volk was able to really control, and he was able to, in the final minute and a half, I believe, hurt Islam bad, rock him, knock him to the ground. He was able to get on top of Islam, land some pretty big shots, and the fight ended with Volkanovski on top of Islam. So round 5, Volkanovski, no questions, right? So I've laid that out for you. 1 and 4, Islam. 3 and 5, Volk. The rounding question is round 2. That's the one that everybody is up in arms about which way do you have that round going. Me personally, in the moment, I had Islam taking that round. I believe he was able to get the backpack again late into the round, about a minute and 30, minute 40 left. He was able to just ride Volk out for that level. And they had a couple exchanges in the earlier minutes of that round too. Volk was able to catch Islam, but then Islam caught Volk right back. So it was tit for tat, and then Islam with the control. I just had Islam personally taking that round. So for me, at the end of the day, I had it round 1, 2, and 4 for Islam, rounds 3 and 5 for Volk.
Hmm.
The huge hullabaloo is a lot of people believe that Volkanovski was robbed and that he won the fight. He believes he won rounds 2, 3, and 5. So it is round 2 that is the one in question. I think first off, I'm gonna say it's a super close fight. It's razor thin. Some of these rounds are razor thin to be called. The scoring system is trash in mixed martial arts because it's a 10-9 must scoring system. So 1-10-9 can be, a pretty clear cut, dominant, but not super dominant round for one person. But it can also be a super razor thin round where you're just like, I'm going to give the edge to this guy. 10-9s are not created equally.
Law of
It's really,
averages is off there.
yeah, it's really bad. They really need to fix their scoring system. That's one thing, and they need to fix their judging. That's a whole nother story for another day. But I think the judges did get it right. I don't believe the last judge got it right, who gave it 49-46 to Islam, which means he had Islam winning 4 rounds to 1. I didn't see that at all. But I believe the two first judges got it right on the money, 48-47, 48-47 for Islam, 3-2. Now, I will say, I believe that these guys will see each other again. I do believe they're going to run it back. I don't think it's going to be next. I think Volk has some business he's got to take care of, unifying the titles with Yair. And I think Islam has a contender coming up. Hopefully, if Beneil Dariush is able to beat Charles Oliveira in May, he is next up for that lightweight championship. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I was super unimpressed with Islam Makhachev in that fight. I don't care what anybody says. I was not impressed at all. Okay. I went in there and I bought the hype. I bought it. I bought what people were selling me. Okay. I bought this insanely high level grappler that is going to slice through Volkanovski. Okay. I believed that. I bought into it. That is not what happened. Now, yes, was the height probably a lot of a more of a struggle than I think everybody thought? 100%. It's a lot tougher to take a guy down when he's that low to the ground, and especially when he had the backpack on Volk, you could look at it and you'd be like, "How the hell is he going to get a choke on Volk? Where's the neck? There's no neck on Volk." So it is tough, but again,
So you meant you're
I have.
disappointed in Islam.
Why am I disappointed?
You meant you were disappointed in Islam, not Volk, right?
Not in Volk. No, yeah,
Okay.
no. I'm very disappointed in Islam. I'll get to Volk. I was but Islam, super disappointed. And I think I've come to the conclusion, and this was my own fault, nobody else's. Islam Makhachev is not Habib. He's not. Okay. He's better up than Habib on the feet, but he's just not Habib in the ferocity. So I've now realized that 100% now, and going forward, I'm gonna adjust accordingly. I was just super disappointed in Islam. It seemed at times he was unable to get the takedown. Volkanovski threatened a takedown at one point, and I was just like, "What the
We were
hell is
talking
going on?"
about this, putting his back against the mat
He
on the cage, man.
Volk put Islam's back on the cage multiple
Yeah.
times in the clinch. You would never have imagined that with Habib. You wouldn't have imagined that with Islam going into the fight, but it happened. My mind was literally blown while this fight was going on. And now back to Volk. Bravo. I know he doesn't want to hear it. I've heard him in the press conference. I heard him on interviews with Ariel Helwani. He doesn't want the congratulations. He doesn't want any of that, how impressive he was, because at the end of the day, he lost the fight. And that's a competitor. And I respect that. But God damn it, did Volk's stock go up insanely? Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Okay, he went from a guy who was not very liked because of his 3 fights with Holloway and how controversial the first 2 were and how much of a fan favorite Max Holloway is. He was looked at as the villain. He just had to be typecasted because when you're going up against a guy like Max who's loved, you have to be the villain, even though you're not a bad guy. It's just how the people are. So he has won me over completely. I did not expect this. I doubted him. I doubted Volkanovski. And for that, I apologize. And you made me eat crow. And I'm happy I did because goddamn, it was a great fight. And Volk, you put on a phenomenal performance. And I know you don't want to hear it, but you should be goddamn proud of yourself because you were this freaking close to winning the fight. And I will tell you this, if they do match up again, Alexander Volkanovski is going to have the mental edge on Islam Makhachev, and I would pick Volk to win that fight because Islam thought he was going to go straight through Volk. That was not the case. All right. Volk was playing with house money in that fight. It's going to be different the second time, and I think Volk is going to understand he just has to make a couple of minor adjustments, more volume, being more active. He even said in the fight, Islam's strength was not what it was hyped up to be. It wasn't. Volk said at points I felt I was stronger than Islam, which is insane to hear. So I just think in a second fight, Volkanovski is going to be walking in with this air of confidence, like you're not unbeatable anymore. I showed you can be beaten. I made it's kind of like the quote from Infinity War, John. I know you don't know it, but when Iron Man and Thanos are fighting, and Iron Man does all this crazy stuff, but he's only able to get one cut, one drop of blood from Thanos.
I
But
watched Infinity Stone.
okay, but that one drop of blood is I showed that I can make a god bleed. And when you can show that a god can bleed just like you, it makes you question him. And that's what Volk did. He made Islam look very, very beatable. I tweeted there are a bunch of lightweights out there that are foaming at the mouth to get in there with Islam from what the performance he showed up. He better not look like that ever again. Because before this, he did not look like that. And this was his toughest fight. I told you that this was his toughest fight. So you better be on your P's and Q's, Islam, and maybe the Khabib not being in a corner was bigger than what it was made out to be, because he even FaceTimed him after the fight, and he said in the press conference that Khabib was chewing his ass out like, brother, why you no do this? Why you no wrestle and do all this? And Islam just says, brother, maybe if you were here, I would have done this, but I did this. So maybe there's some truth in that, where if Khabib was there, he would have able to been telling him, yo, Islam, what are you doing, man? Stop striking and just go for the takedown, go all out. You are better than this guy in the wrestling and grappling department. You should be going through him like that. I don't know. All I know going forward is Islam has shown that there are holes in the game that can be exposed. So I'm excited for the future. And I think Volkanovski's stock rises significantly. He is an absolute fan favorite. He's a little too nice for my take at points. I wish he would just, because he's always just saying, even when he kind of takes a dig, but it's not a dig, he always has to say, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or talk shit on people or whatever, but it's like, Volk, no, man, speak your, like, feel that, man. No, you did that, man. So I love Volk. Volk has won me over as a fan. I'm what a performance, what a fight. There was one last controversy also.
Dan Hooker.
That came out after the fight. Dan Hooker. Go ahead, John.
No. I
okay.
I want to hear your takeaway on this, because I was like,
oh, you saw this, the IV?
Yeah, I was seeing it before.
Okay, so Dan Hooker tweeted out that he knows specifically that Islam Makhachev, after I guess the weight cut, used an IV to rehydrate, which is illegal now for the UFC fighters to do that. They can't. There was once a time where they were allowed to, but now they are not allowed to. USADA says that's not allowed, and it can be up to a 2-year suspension. Now, Hooker has come out. He is not mincing words, John. He is basically plain as day saying this guy cheated and I have the proof. I have it. So question me on it. I hope USADA takes this seriously and does a formal investigation, because this should be looked at. If he is out here making these type of claims, they need to be looked at. Whether true or not, they need to be looked at. So I tweeted this. If he used the IV and he cheated, Islam should be suspended, stripped, and fined. Okay? Because that's not okay. That's illegal.
You ever see that?
This happened with an IV and being stripped and all that. No, not in my time as being a fan. Maybe some people who are very well versed on the MMA history could tell you that, but not in my what I've seen. The craziest thing I saw was Greg Hardy, John, he fought for the UFC. He used an inhaler between rounds, which is illegal. And his corner actually told him it was okay. I don't know, but that's the closest thing I could say. So the IV, again, if he did it, stripped, suspended, fined. Okay? Secondly, I know it's illegal. I do think I'm not a doctor, so I don't know that much on it. All I can really speak on is I believe it's water being put straight into your bloodstream, for better hydration, because what I've been told and what I know is that the best way to rehydrate yourself is to stick it straight into the bloodstream. That's the quickest way. If that's all it is, I would hope the UFC would look at that and USADA would look at that and allow fighters to do that after weight cuts. Because if you are for fighter health and fighter safety, then that should be okay to do. But it wasn't if Islam did it last weekend.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of like asking you for an equivalent to the NBA of that, but that's never happened before. And there is no equivalent in recent history.
No. I mean, yeah, no, because it's kind of is like a fight type of thing, the IV and stuff. Because NBA players and NFL players don't have to take IVs or cut weight or anything like that. So yeah, but these fighters go through insane, grueling weight cuts. I mean, Islam weighs 200 pounds out of fight camp, John. He's making 155. So I mean, there can be better, but that's opening Pandora's box about the UFC and mixed martial arts as a whole, where there's a lot of things that are not shined lights on, because it's not, it's hardcore fans like to look at it as a major sport. And I wish it was, but there are some things that have gone on where you can clearly see this is not looked at the same level of an NFL or an NBA or NHL or MLB or whatever, because of the things that people are allowed to get away with and whatnot.
Yeah, Adam Silver's got a straight jacket, everybody in the NBA, man. So I guess there's less to do. I'm not quite sure. Him and David Starr.
But what a great night for Perth, Australia. Crowd was electric, and we are T-minus less than 3 weeks away from the return of the GOAT, John Bones Jones, at heavyweight this time. Cannot wait.
The legend, yeah, that's gonna be interesting. With all that being said, is there anything else, PC? We didn't cover 740. We already got the Bucks and Celtics playing. I think the Bucks are winning tonight. I'm not sure what the line is for the game, but I think the Bucks are probably going to be favorites with no Jalen Brown and no Marcus Smart.
Yeah, probably. I'd agree. But nope, nothing else to be said. Great show. Good Super Bowl besides that, call. Good UFC event. Love it. Good time to be a sports fan. It's time to dive straight into the NBA now, baby. Once the All-Star break is over, we're kicking into fourth gear or whatever it is. I'm not a car guy.
It's third gear and there's 6 gears, which is too many gears. The 6, well, only in the NBA is there 6 gears or something. Also, no Tatum tonight, no Horford. So, I mean,
oh God, yeah.
I hyped up that game as if the Celtics had 4 other starters. They're missing 4 of them. But J.D. Davison, rookie out of Alabama, and Danilo Danilo tore his ACL. Why is he on? Neither here nor there. According to Google, he's starting. But with all that being said, I'll wrap up episode number 75 of the Wise Guys podcast. No J-Ray today for Valentine's Day. Shout out to him, but we'll be back for episode number 76. With all that being said, till next time. Peace.
Stay glass.